as the Chief Justice of the country from Mogoeng. But the president, because again, it is his prerogative, he decided that he wants to go with Justice Zondo, much against the protest of certain political parties that have argued that it doesn't make sense to appoint Justice Zondo as the Chief Justice of the country, considering that he only has another 2 years left of his term at the Constitutional Court. Because remember, with the Constitutional Court, the justices there serve a 12-year term, so a 12-year term as the justice, and even if you do get promoted to become the Deputy Chief Justice of the country or the Chief Justice of the country, you still only have those 12 years. And once you've reached those 12 years, you must retire, or once you've reached the age of 70. So that's one of the stories that we're following up on this afternoon. Your reaction to this decision that has been taken by the president, you can drop me a voice note on 0614-104-107 and also an X at Aldrin Sampear. Also on the show this afternoon, we speak to Mervyn Dirks, who is a former ANC MP, former member of the provincial legislature in KwaZulu-Natal as well. He's now joined the MK party. He has been expelled from the ANC, so he'll be joining us shortly. And then at around 3:20, we speak to Sophie Mokoena, SABC News International News Editor, unpacking Israel's report on its implementation of the provisional measures, as ordered by the International Court of Justice. And then at 4:10, we speak to Crispin Phiri, who's the spokesperson for the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, as the ministry kicked off a 2-day conference that seeks to review the criminal justice system. Considering that there is this review of the criminal justice system, what would you like to see in our criminal justice system? Where do you think we need to tighten up the screws? And what sort of legislation would you like to see being incorporated into our criminal justice system as well? 0614-104-107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear. So those are some of the stories that we have on the agenda for you this afternoon.
The only talk radio afternoon drive show that makes sense. Beyond the Headline with Aldrin Sampear, right here on SAFM.
It is 12 minutes after 3 o'clock, so following Alabama's ruling that frozen embryos are children, some Christian groups have been left divided. The decision made by Alabama's Supreme Court last week meant that IVF treatment had to be paused, and has left some Christian groups torn on the ruling and the role of theology in U.S. lawmaking. Margaret Boyce is a devout Christian who was days away from her first IVF appointment when the ruling came into place. Although the ruling did not explicitly ban or restrict IVF treatment, it has still created deep uncertainty for clinics, medical workers who handle embryos, and fear prosecution. The BBC's Nomia Iqbal has that story.
I feel like I'm going to get teary.
For Margaret, the politics has become personal.
This ruling should not add anxiety onto something that's already just so hard and anxiety-inducing and just so taxing on you.
She and her husband have a young son and want to build their family. They've turned to IVF and were just days away from her first appointment. Margaret describes herself as pro-life, but finds the ruling difficult to comprehend. The Chief Justice used the Bible to justify his reasoning on why frozen embryos are children. Some anti-abortion groups celebrated, describing it as a pro-life win.
I don't think there's anything more pro-life than couples who are doing everything in their power, everything in their control. You know, the doctors doing everything in their power and their control to try to create that new life. It's like nobody understands more that, you know, that embryo is not a child more than the person that is yearning for that embryo to be a child.
The Alabama Supreme Court ruled that an existing law in the state, wrongful death of a minor, covers not just fetuses in the womb, but embryos held in a lab or storage facility as well.
Each of these tanks has stored eggs and sperm and embryos, and we can't go in.
Dr. Beth Malizia is co-founder of Alabama Fertility. Like many clinics, they've paused new treatments while they get legal clarity.
We're doing all of our usual routine things. We have a hold on a couple of things that we are holding in the laboratory for patient and our safety, but we're here to stay. We are going to fight this.
In the days after Alabama's Supreme Court ruling, there was huge reaction from politicians across the country. But it's local lawmakers here who are under pressure to come up with a solution. Republicans in Alabama plan to introduce a bill to protect IVF, but it's tricky. They can't alienate those who support the ruling and those who are disturbed by it.
We're going to find a fix. Just don't worry about it as little, or worry about it as little as you can, because we're going to find an answer. Hopefully clinics will be open soon and you can get back to your normal infertility issues instead of worrying about access.
Has the intervention by former President Donald Trump put pressure on you?
No, or anybody else. I mean, Biden came out, Haley's come out. Let's just get it right.
Democrats in the minority here sense an opportunity, but also danger.
Those other countries and other places that consider themselves to be extremely conservative could follow suit. We want to make certain that we're getting ahead of that and righting the wrong here in Alabama, ground zero. This is ground zero right now.
First it was abortion, and now this ruling has opened a new battlefront in reproductive rights. Republicans want to minimise the controversy, Democrats want to tie them to it. Nomia Iqbal, BBC News, Alabama.
#SAFMBTH.
It's 16 minutes after 3 o'clock, and we're in conversation next with Mervyn Dirks, who's a former ANC Member of Parliament, who says he's not bothered by his expulsion from the ruling party. Dirks recently cited the ANC stance on the impeachment of Judge John Hlophe as a pivotal reason for his departure. He joins us now to give us more details of his expulsion. Mervyn, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to your listeners.
I always thought that it's cold outside the ANC, so why did you choose the cold?
No, it's definitely not cold outside the ANC of Ramaphosa. It's definitely not cold outside the ANC of Ramaphosa. It's not cold.
Yeah, so why did you jump?
Look, it was nothing personal. Let me first start by saying to you that, look, the ANC basically in KZN, the ANC have treated me very well over the years, and I have no personal issue with the leadership of the ANC and KZN, and they've treated me well. They've treated me very, very well. But I believe the time had come for me to leave, because it was ideologically we were not on the same page anymore, and the direction that the ANC is taking under Ramaphosa, that made me leave the ANC.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so did the ANC reach out to you after they were seeing you supporting the MK party? What happened?
No, they phoned me the next Sunday. I just decided that I'm leaving the scene of the ANC and I'm moving to MK. I met President Zuma at a rally in Makongo outside Pietermaritzburg, and I formally joined the Umkhonto we Sizwe party. And that was trending all over social media. And the next morning, the provincial secretary of the ANC called me to say that I must give him a letter of resignation. So I said, no, I've already gone there. So I said, you must rather fire me. Mm-hmm. And he said, no, you want a letter of resignation from me. I said, no, I can't give you a letter of resignation. Fire me. That's the term I use, fire me. And then he said, he was insisting on this letter, but I said, no, you must expel me from the ANC. I've already gone, so... And then he sent me a letter at 2 o'clock that I'm expelled from the ANC and that I'm also removed as a member of the provincial legislature.
Yeah, and the rule that's being cited, so there was no disciplinary process, right? It was you have done this and we want you to resign, or either we will be expelling you, and the decision was taken to expel you. So there was no formal sit down of the disciplinary hearing, yeah?
Yeah, no, there's no disciplinary. They did not follow the rules, basically, but I'm not interested.
Yeah, and I totally understand it. I totally understand it. Because for me, the interesting thing about this, Mervyn, as well, is that the section that is being cited that you have contravened is joining or supporting a political organization or party other than the organization in alliance with the ANC, and that is according to the Acts of Misconduct, Section 25, subsection 17.3. The interesting thing for me about that, though, Mervyn, is that that's the same section that was also cited in former President Jacob Zuma's suspension.
Yes,
not
you're correct.
expulsion, but suspension of his membership. And there are other laws or constitutional rules of the ANC that has been contravened, according to the ANC, by the former president. But what do you read into this, how the ANC is dealing with the issue of a former President Jacob Zuma? I do understand that you say that you're not bothered by this decision to expel you, but from a political standpoint, what's your reading into how the ANC is dealing with the former President Jacob Zuma's suspension or decision to support the MK party?
You see, aside of the ANC, they are aware of it, but sometimes I get the feeling that they are living in denial. But I think they're quite aware of it, that they are bleeding seriously in KwaZulu-Natal. President Zuma is tremendous for KwaZulu-Natal, even amongst the Indian community, the colored community, and the African community. The support that President Zuma have in this province is overwhelming. And they are acutely aware that if they're going to make any wrong move against the old man, it will be more disastrous for them. And I think that's why they do not want to expel him. But they are going to lose the province. The ANC is going to lose the province. If you look at the past allocation of the ANC to the rally at Moses Mabhida this weekend, if you look at the past allocation, then you'll see clearly where the people that filled the same stadium, those 60,000 people came from. They were outside KZN. About 20,000 people at the stadium was from KZN. The majority of them was outside KZN. Eastern Cape had 295 buses. Gauteng had 95 buses. KZN only had 190 buses to that rally. So it is clear that people from KZN did not attend that rally. We had about 20,000 people from KZN in that rally, and we have 5.3 million voters in KZN. And when you go to the community, people in the ordinary people on the streets, in the informal settlements, in communities, they are very clear that they will not support the ANC and they're going to vote for Mkhonto. So on May 29, there will be a black spot on the ballot paper, and the victim, the casualty, will be the African National Congress. MK will dislodge the ANC from power in KZN.
Yeah. What's your role in the MK party?
No, MK doesn't have structures at this moment. I am one of the tens of thousands of foot soldiers of Mkhonto, where our task is to mobilize. We work day and night. In fact, I'm going to a meeting now to work day and night to mobilize communities. But it's not, in fact, it's not difficult task even, because you go to communities before you can even say anything. They say, no, we put Mkhonto is there. Our main task will be how we manage this thing and how we're going to get those people to the voting station and manage it. But it's not a difficult task. President Zuma, his popularity has done it all for us already in KwaZulu-Natal.
Thank you so much for your time. Mervyn Dirks, the former ANC Member of Parliament and also former ANC member of the provincial legislature in KwaZulu-Natal. He's been expelled from the party for supporting the MK party and also joining the MK party as per the rules of the ANC's constitution when it comes to misconduct, chapter 25, subsection 17.13, that he has contravened the rules by joining or supporting a political party that is not in alliance with the ANC.
Load shedding is a controlled way to balance the supply and demand of electricity on the power grid and to prevent a blackout. Eskom and government are working hard to solve the energy crisis and improve power generation capacity. If we all use only what we need, we could help reduce demand on the network and ultimately end load shedding together. Government and Eskom, working hard to reduce and ultimately end load shedding.
And we will buy 500 cars, and we will buy 500 more. Just to be the one who buys your car, will come to you and offer more. We buy cars, we buy cars. We buy cars, we buy cars.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
The South African Broadcasting Corporation would like to alert the public of an email correspondence purporting to be that of the SABC, threatening the public that they will be issued with a warrant of arrest for non-payment of TV license fees. The public is advised to ignore the contents of a correspondence coming from an email address jjm@mega.bw. This is not an SABC email address, and the corporation will not at any point threaten anyone with a warrant of arrest. The SABC also advises the public not to download any statement from this fake email as instructed. The SABC TV License Department can be reached on 011-3309-555 or can be accessed through an email to tvlic.info@sabc.co.za for friendly and kind customer service. Alternatively, the public may use our secure website, which is www.tvlic.co.za, to download statements.
You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM.
It is 25 minutes after 3 o'clock. In conversation next with Sophie Mokoena, SABC News International News Editor. And this is, of course, on the ICJ matter. And also the question is whether Israel has complied with the provisional measures that were made by the ICJ on the 26th of January. Remember that they were supposed to report back to the ICJ after months. So Sophie Mokoena helps us decipher the Israeli government's report on its implementation of the provisional measures as ordered by the International Court of Justice. Several human rights organizations say Israel has utterly failed to comply with the court's order, arguing that the violence towards civilians has continued unabated. Sophie Mokoena now joining us on the line. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us. The big question that people keep on asking is, has Israel complied with the provisional measures that were handed down by the ICJ on the 26th of January?
In terms of the report, it's not clear whether Israel is able to point out at compliance in terms of the provisional measures that were imposed on Israel. We know that the report was submitted to the ICJ yesterday. The South African government has got the report, but the report will only be made public when the court has given a directive that it should be made public. It is still in the hands of the ICJ in terms of releasing that report. So we don't know what's the content of the report, but when you look at what has been happening, I mean, the media is still covering the Palestine story, and it is still a top story internationally. You can see that nothing has changed. Instead, since then, there were attacks even in Rafah in relation to those camps where you have refugees. When I spoke to the former South African president, Date Kgalema Motlanthe, yesterday, he also pointed out that Israel is not complying, and this has been the history of Israel, and also him even going as far as saying the issue of a two-state solution now, it's not going to work. He is saying perhaps one-state solution and with federal states within that state.
Yeah. So if the court also finds that there is non-compliance with one or even more of the orders that they've handed down, what happens next?
Clearly, the court will again issue an order, but unfortunately, the court, like your international criminal court, they can't arrest. They don't have a military. And therefore, they rely on member states to ensure that you push the other states to do things right. And therefore, now the court will have to rely on member states, particularly the powerful ones like the United States of America, to push Israel to comply. But unfortunately, President Biden was the ice cream. You can see yesterday when he spoke about the possibility of ceasefire that he doesn't take these matters seriously. And therefore, I can't see America changing its tune. And that's exactly what former President Kgalema Motlanthe said yesterday, that it's countries such as the United States of America that must push Israel to comply. Other countries are doing their part. There's been an arms embargo against Israel by a number of countries in Europe and around the world. Other countries are very vocal. We even saw the president of Brazil saying that what's happening in Gaza is the same as what happened to the Jews and previously, which led to the genocide convention being adopted by member states. So you have these countries that are speaking and who are vocal, others trying to implement certain decisions, stopping the supply of arms, but America is still supplying arms to Israel.
Yeah, so the possibility of finding a ceasefire resolution, considering, of course, that President Biden has said that my national security advisor tells me that we are very close, and then you have the March 10th date, which is possibly the start of the month of Ramadan.
We are told that there's that possibility on the 4th to get that kind of an agreement, as you pointed out, trying to ensure that before the start of Ramadan, you've already agreed on a ceasefire, but we don't know. Our colleagues in Paris are monitoring the talks. We know that the Emir of Qatar is now in France this afternoon, and perhaps him being there, as you know, that Qatar is facilitating the talks, might assist. But the issue here is it is up to Benjamin Netanyahu. He's given some signs that he is willing to engage, because the fact that Friday he did dispatch his team to go and engage in talks, we are hoping that before end of the week, there will be that big breaking story in relation to ceasefire.
Thank you so much for your time. Sophie Mukwena, SABC International News Editor. It's a minute after 3:30, time for the news headlines.
With headlines at 3:30, I am Dino Mutaung. Good afternoon. The Independent Electoral Commission says besides dealing with budget cuts in an election year, they also have extra expenses flowing from the Electoral Amendment Act. In other news, President Cyril Ramaphosa has nominated Deputy Chief Justice Mandi Samaya as Chief Justice of South Africa, and the leader of one of Netherlands' biggest drug cartels has been sentenced to life in prison in what is reported to be the largest criminal trial in Dutch history. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
And let's see what's happening on the roads with Rob Byrne. Good afternoon.
Yeah, thanks, Aldrin. Not a bad run up the N1 through Midrand and into Pretoria today. If you're just about to leave Joburg and go north, the news is pretty good. Going south, it's not so great. There's some traffic between Houghton Estate and Crown interchange from sort of 11th Avenue through to Crown. That's reasonably busy today. Now, if you're leaving Durban, you'll hit a backlog of traffic on the N3. That is out to Pavilion Mall. There's a breakdown in the road direction. You're always feeling the breakdowns on that section of the N3 between Pavilion and Spaghetti Junction these days, because you're down a lane and then a vehicle breaks down, and it's almost a guaranteed traffic straight away. So Sherwood heading out towards Pavilion Mall via Spaghetti Junction, quite slow. Some queues on the M7 going down towards the Bluff area. That might be trucks queuing up around the Rossborough area, just moving through South Coast Road down towards the container terminal. Bit of traffic on the N3 in Chunga on your way to Pietermaritzburg. There was a breakdown. It's only just being cleared, so that could well be the backlog. The N6 through the Eastern Cape at Cathcart looking all right. There was a bit of protest earlier this afternoon, but it was dealt with pretty quickly. The N2 Dutworth down to Butterworth has been reopened around about lunchtime today after this morning's blockage. And Cape Town, we're just checking some delays on Oud-Kaapsteweg. It's on the Steenberg Silver Lake, the Steenberg and Westlake side of over Oud-Kaapsteweg, but it is very slow, both heading to Noordhoek and arriving from Silvermine and from the Noordhoek area. And the highway's looking fairly busy. N2 queued up from the CBD to Hospital Bend. N7 Jakes Cravell Drive already queuing south through Goodwood to Four Trekker Road. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Duming Kapele.
And Dumi is joining us in studio. Good afternoon.
Afternoon, Aldrin.
Are you rooting for the ladies?
Of course. Banyana all the way. They literally one step away from going on to the last round to qualify for the Olympics. So we're looking forward to seeing what they're going to be doing. But they are in action today and they take on Tanzania in the Women's Olympic Qualifier third round second leg today at Bombela Stadium. Kickoff at 7:30. South Africa defeated Tanzania 3-0 in the first leg with goals from Jermaine Seopo-Sengwe, Tembi Kgatlana and Hilda Magaya. And they come in the return match very high on confidence. Also, today's match will serve as a special tribute to Seopo-Sengwe, who will become the 10th Banyana player to get 100 international caps. Kickoff for that game again is at 7:30. Meanwhile, Mamelodi Sundowns will be looking to set a new benchmark for the domestic game. If they avoid defeat against AmaZulu in the DStv Premiership tonight, they will extend their record streak of unbeaten league games to 40. If AmaZulu do not beat them in the clash at Loftus. Now, Sundowns have not lost any of their past 39 matches since the 2nd of September back in 2022. That is 1 year, 5 months and 25 days. And back then they had lost to SuperSport United at Artridgeville. So they're looking to become the first club to go through an entire domestic season without defeat, having reached the halfway mark of their DStv Premiership campaign with 12 wins and 3 draws. And a win today would also see them extend their lead at the top of the table to 12 points, and still with the game in hand over their closest challenger Cape Town City and SuperSport United, who meet in Cape Town tomorrow. So it will be very, very hard to stop the Sundowns train. Will AmaZulu be able to make it? We'll find out tonight. In rugby, tickets for the Springboks' highly anticipated home tests against Ireland, Portugal and Argentina that will be priced $150 and $350 will go on sale in March, only a few days before the Double Rugby World Cup champions host their first alignment camp. The Boks will take on Ireland in 2 tests in the incoming series, with tickets going on sale on the 4th of March for the test in Pretoria, which is happening on the 6th of July, and the 11th of March for the clash in Durban. That game on the 13th of July, and you can get those tickets via Ticket Pro. Now, this will be followed by the historic first test against Portugal in Bloemfontein on the 20th of July in the closing match of the mid-year series. The Springboks will continue their season in August with the Castle Lager Rugby Championship, when they travel to Australia for back-to-back tests against the Wallabies before hosting arch rivals New Zealand in Johannesburg and Cape Town. And then the team will travel to Argentina for their penultimate match of the tournament before wrapping up their campaign against Los Pumas on the 28th of September in Nelspruit. In cricket, New Zealand paceman Neil Wagner called time on his 64 test career today, bowing out as the nation's 5th highest wicket taker with 260 victims after being informed that he would not be selected in the upcoming series against Australia. Now, Wagner was picked in the squad for the 2 home tests against Pat Cummins Australia, but was told by head coach Gary Stead that he would not play in either matches. With that said, it's a wrap from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour for SAFM Sport. I'm Dumin Khapel.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
The Portfolio Committee on Public Works and Roads Community Safety and Transport Management will conduct a public hearing on Marine Pollution Amendment Bill and Transport Appeal Tribunal Amendment Bill on the 29th of February 2024 at Madiboho Community Hall in Madiboho, Ngaka Mudirimulema District, Ching Community Hall Extension 4 in Vennesdorp, Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, Hamariba Tribal Hall in Morukwenya, Dr. Ruth Sohomosi Mumpati, Letabile Community Hall in Letabile, Buchanala District. All hearing starts at 10 in the morning.
It takes one encounter with Africa for your world to change. From the 26th to the 28th of February, the global business event sector will experience the majesty of Africa at Meetings Africa. Meetings Africa showcases Africa's diverse services and products in the meetings, incentives, conferences, and exhibitions industry. Come experience Africa's spirit of collaboration at Sandton Convention Center. Meetings Africa, unlocking Africa's opportunities through quality connections.
The only talk radio afternoon drive show that makes sense. Beyond the Headline with Aldrin Sampear, right here on SAFM.
Take your voice notes on 0614-104-107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear. When we come back, we get reaction to the nomination of Justice Meyer to become the next Chief Justice of the country. We'll be in conversation with the President of the Black Lawyers Association.
Yeah, good morning. Good afternoon, Aldrin. Yes, Busiso and Manfred. Yes, ANC now is cleaning itself now. Yes, now that all the rotten apples are going out of the ANC, the likes of Mervyn Dix. Yes, good riddance. I thank you.
Good afternoon, Aldrin and Radio SA listeners. You know, it's shame for MK at KwaZulu-Natal. They are so confident. Really, they don't know the spirit of election. People will never tell them the truth. They will never tell them the truth because they know exactly what has happened between Inkatha and the ANC. Those people will be shocked after election. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sam.
Actually, I think it was Professor Susan Boyson who was saying that the launch of the MK party is also rejuvenated. The ANC's hopeful, the ground forces of the party, and we will just see a more heightened campaigning of the party, especially in KwaZulu-Natal. I wonder what your take is on it, but every now and then when you do see visuals, especially coming out of KwaZulu-Natal, where the MK party is having some of its rallies and its mini rallies, the numbers do look huge. The numbers are quite big, and some people obviously continuously pointing out that this also shows once again that we have a high unemployment rate in this country to have so many people available to go for a campaign during the week. But that then also speaks to the people who want to come and campaign for this newly launched political party. And I really doubt that the MK party would have gained so much traction if it wasn't for the endorsement of former President Jacob Zuma and also his continuous public appearances endorsing MK party. And here's the other thing about it. Every time he speaks, there's going to be a soundbite or a quote that is going to end up in the news, and the MK party remains part of the news cycle and in the imagination of the electorate, whether you support the MK party or you don't support the MK party. But there it is. And some of the polls has also pointed out that they're making inroads in KwaZulu-Natal.
Good afternoon, Adren. It's Brian Mabai from Protea Glen. In football, we got a transfer window and a transfer season because we know that there is going to be drama. So in our South African politics, they are more like WWE. They do what they want, and it's so funny how they behave towards the election. What I need them to do, they must introduce a new policy. If a member wants to join another political party, that other political parties must pay for the signing fee like they do in football in a transfer window season. I want to witness something here because during about election time, there will always be drama and chaos. Brian Mabai, Protagland. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Aldrin. No, we must be realistic and agree that the ANC will return to the seat of government come the elections after May 29. So there won't be any changes regarding Justice Maya. And indeed, Justice Maya is a good asset for the country and the judiciary because she is not knowledgeable about the laws of the country. So I think those who were saying no, the president should have appointed her ahead of Zondo were just playing politics. And as now, the president has just appointed her to be the chief judge come August. So there's no contradiction here. She's a good person, and I think it should be accepted by all the people who love the country. Thank you. This teaching.
I wonder what you're reading in. What do you read into the president's decision to go against the suggestion and the nomination? Well, it's not really a nomination, but the recommendation from the JSC 2 years ago that it must be Justice Maya who is appointed as the Chief Justice of the country. Instead, of course, the president went with Chief Justice Raymond Zondo. And again, that question is coming up again. Why was Justice Zondo appointed in the first place, considering that he only had about 2 years left of his non-renewable 12-year term as a Justice of the Constitutional Court? So what do you read into that? 0614-104-107, and you can drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 104.3 FM in Rustenburg. Going beyond the headline with Aldrin Sampear.
If your partner decides to go and get a firearm, does that for you also mean it's the end of the relationship?
She used to like a drink, and there would be some acrimony. She liked arguing. The moment she got that gun license, I said, I am out of here. I dumped her. I left. That was 2016.
He has shown me the gun when we have our second meeting. And I just felt like how come you go around carrying a gun and then you are even showing me who to practice? What does that mean? I'm sorry. My kids are young. Sorry.
It's just the way that you phrase that as well.
Hashtag SAFMBTH.
14 minutes now before 4 o'clock. In conversation next with Nkosana Mvundlela, who is the president of the Black Lawyers Association. So President Cyril Ramaphosa has nominated Deputy Chief Justice Mandisa Maya as South Africa's next Chief Justice. The position of a Chief Justice will become vacant on the 31st of August this year, when Justice Raymond Zondo's term of office comes to an end. And Nkosana is now joining us on the line. Nkosana, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us. What do you make of this nomination? And of course, if Justice Maya does become the first Justice Maya does become the Chief Justice of the country, should be the first woman Chief Justice at that.
Good afternoon, Adrian, and good afternoon to all the listeners of SAFM. The BLA is elated at the thought of the decision by the President to nominate Deputy Chief Justice Maya. You would recall very well that last year, at the point of her appointment as the DCJ, we put out a statement welcoming the progressive move in this country of recognizing the fact that Justice Maya is capable, is able, and has shown all the capability and leadership at the SCA as the president of the SCA. And that was a welcome move then, and it's still the best move now that this country is going to have the first Chief Justice being female, being this capable, and all the judges of South Africa would be better led as we continue seeing the better leadership of the judiciary out of the appointments that we see out of our JPs and CJ and the presidents that ultimately gets appointed.
It's certainly historic also in the sense that Justice Maya was once again the first president of the Supreme Court of Appeal. And if I'm correct, and I'd love you to correct me if I'm wrong here, Nkosana, that would mean that Justice Maya is the first person ever to have held the position of the judge, of the president of the Supreme Court of Appeal, and also the title of Chief Justice of the country.
She's a person of first, 2020. So it's quite a great resemblance of her leadership quality and style, because as you observe correctly that she was the president of the SCA, which in the past was actually the apex court in South Africa, and now she's going to be the Chief Justice in the apex court now in terms of the constitutional dispensation now. It tells you of the caliber of the person she is and the quality she brings to that seat of leadership. So we are all out as Black Lawyers Association and all the other supporters and the members of the legal profession, where I believe we would have all the necessary confidence to support her throughout her role in that seat.
And then again, also, Nkosana, the president, of course, during the appointment or the process leading up to the appointment of Justice Zondo as the Chief Justice of the country, is that there was a very public process. There were the interviews that were taking place as well, and then the recommendation that came from the JSC that it must be Justice Maya who is appointed. What do you make of the decision of the president this time around not to go the public route anymore of having interviews, as we saw with the appointment of Justice Zondo? And of course, it is the president's prerogative.
I want to take it from a point that perhaps it's lessons learned. It's been hardly a year since we saw her on the interview seat. I don't think that the members of the public had forgotten how well she fared, and I don't think that the legal profession would have forgotten that we were dealing with a person who was holding such a senior position at the SCA, which, as I've already intimated, was the apex court then in South Africa before 1994. So you would understand that this person has been in such a big position of leadership, such that the interviews was more to say to the public, this is the person that you want to, that has the capacity to lead you. Therefore, I want you to be able to observe her for yourselves. It not be only my decision. But my point is that, in my view, and I believe that this view could be shared by many lawyers, the fact that the interviews are not that long ago, we did not forget, and it may really not be necessary to put her through the grueling path. And perhaps, as it would have happened, a lot of us suspected that perhaps as Chief Justice Raymond Zondo was appointed then, it became a little obvious in our view as we assessed the situation that perhaps it was more a question of moving her into the Constitutional Court under the tutelage of somebody who was there before her, and then her then fitting into the role, having observed and or worked with other people who were there before her. I think it was more a handover process more than anything.
More of a handover process, and some may even say it was quite predictable that she could become the next Chief Justice of the country. But with that said, also is that her tenure would start on the 1st of September, a day after Justice Zondo's term comes to an end. But that will also be the day or days after the elections have taken place, and if anything happens that we have a different president, and that different president then comes to a determination that he wants to change the Chief Justice, or he wants to come up, or they would want to come up with a different candidate for that position, what would your take be? And I know I'm speaking here hypothetically, but what would your take be?
I think I understand that different governments, different decisions, and different expectations and or preferences. But South African society has become so connected to the processes such that I haven't seen government interfere willy-nilly in decision-making processes of other institutions, particularly government institutions. A CJ is not a DG, Aldrin.
Yeah.
It can be so easy for somebody just to wake up tomorrow and say, I wouldn't like CJ Maya, therefore I want to reopen the process. Parliament is there to actually guard against those kind of processes. The society of South Africa is so informed about its rights and how this constitution is being implemented, such that I doubt that even if it were to be a different president, such a person would worry about the person at the helm. You know, the interesting thing about South African constitution is that it gives power to the Constitutional Court to take decisions, not to the CJ to be a sole decision maker.
Yeah.
So to the extent that we are governed by the rule of law, not the rule by law, then we are safe in the sense that if at all there is to be any decision by a president of such a process, it is easy for certain NGOs and members of society to probably even litigate against it. But I so much doubt that such a scenario would play out.
And still speaking about the Constitutional Court, do you think that the advisory role decision by the CJ or by the Constitutional Court should go through a public process at all, considering your objection to Justice Zek Yaqub being appointed on an advisory basis, as the Chief Justice has explained?
Let me put context to that answer, Adrian. Our media statement specifically says that we wouldn't support any process that suggests that retired justices must come in to advise. I mean, we're talking about men and women of such magnitude and capability that they are appointed to the Constitutional Court on merit. Therefore, it cannot be correct that those that are retired must come and advise them about cases that they have to take. In our understanding, the entire process of acting things and so forth is on its own a skills transfer kind of process. Therefore, to the extent that we would have expected that this advisory role, to the extent that it includes these judges advising on matters that may include even certain appeals, if there are matters that are there on appeal and the decision whether the matters should proceed or not, we still view it purely as a judicial process, because once that decision is made, what then happens with the judges who have to go and preside over that matter? What happens if they are actually of a contrary view? We cannot be creating a scenario in which other people will take decisions at the back office and then some other people have to implement it to the fore, in the front. And for us, that is interfering with that judicial independence. Yep. And I'm sure you'd recall that that's what our statement speaks to say we do not doubt the honesty of those retired judges. But the whole point is that there is a good reason why we are saying they have reached a point of retirement. But lastly, on this point, you would also recall that the Constitution provides for a 12-year tenure.
Non-renewable.
Now, if you are to appoint them to come and do anything there, unless to participate in a particular matter, if there was such a thing, you obviously are then extending that term, either deliberately or inadvertently. So we think that process, perhaps the CJ should rethink it and not carry it on, because we believe that it doesn't come out right in a constitutional democracy like ours.
Thank you so much for your time. Nkosana Mvundlela is the president of the Black Lawyers Association.
#SAFMBTH
0614104107. Let's go to Midrand. Khotso, good afternoon.
Afternoon, Aldrin. How are you?
I'm well, Khotso. How are you doing?
Good, man. Yeah, I also want to comment and say congratulations to Justice Maya, although I want to raise my disappointment about our South African Parliament on many issues. Number one, let's deal with the issue whereby on the interviews, after the JSE interview, the person who was appointed and the person who was recommended by that panel was Justice Maya. But to contrary, who got Zondo. Where have you seen it in your life whereby people go to interview? After that interview, that person was never even recommended. The person who was supposed to be appointed was not appointed, but all the panel members recommended Justice Maya. So our parliament, because they are voting people out to say they don't want this public protector, they don't want this judge. What about a straightforward and a pure matter which was there?
Yeah.
Zondo never won that interview. In the heart of hearts, Zondo knows. That's why you can even see the posture of Zondo always when it's supposed to deal with issues of judiciary. And when we are raising to say our judiciary is highly biased, our judiciary has been eroded, our judiciary on its own, you can find it on many ways whereby there's a vote of no confidence on them. But Zondo was appointed.
Yeah.
Despite all these issues which I'm raising with you.
I think it's
Justice
also important
Maya
to
now,
know from the president why exactly he has decided to appoint, appoint Justice Zondo over Justice Maya, considering the recommendation that came from the JSC as well. Apologies, Khotso. We need to go to the news but I just quickly want to read these X's. Nobuntu saying, Aldrin, it's troubling to see that the ANC is treating women as an afterthought. In my view, ANC appears reluctant to promote women to key leadership positions. It's regrettable that this very capable justice is now a means to secure female voters. That's an interesting perspective. And of course, this is happening during the election season. Rural Boy saying that I can't wait to see the list of MK parties, of the MK party. What I know is that its followers will be shocked and many will turn their backs on the MK party. Zuma wants his kids in parliament and he care less about the rest of them, those in leadership. It's 4 o'clock, time for the news.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
Top stories: IEC impacted by budget cuts and Ramaphosa nominates Mandisa Maya as next Chief Justice. With the news, I am Dino Mutaung. Good afternoon. The Independent Electoral Commission says besides dealing with budget cuts in an election year, they also have extra expenses flowing from the Electoral Amendment Act. The Commission's officials appeared before Parliament's Home Affairs Committee to, among other things, discuss its budget and timetable for the 2024 general election. IEC Chief Financial Officer Don Mbata says they are going into elections with a budget cut of 281 million rand and with the financial implications of the Electoral Amendment Act, such as the introduction of a third ballot paper.
The projected length of the ballot paper is longer, and this was for the first time, and this does have financial impact. Also, the impact of the increased longer ballot paper on the electoral material, such as ballot boxes, security seals, as well as ballot booths. Also, the possibility of increasing the number of staff allocated, and you must also be aware that there's also a high probability that there will be increased litigation.
President Cyril Ramaphosa has nominated Deputy Chief Justice Mandisa Maya as Chief Justice of South Africa. This will make Maya the first female Chief Justice since the dawn of democracy, if appointed. This nomination comes ahead of the end of Chief Justice Raymond Zondo's term of office on the 31st of August this year. Presidency spokesperson Vincent Magwenya.
The President has invited the leaders of political parties represented in the National Assembly to make submissions on the suitability or otherwise of Deputy Chief Justice Maya to hold the office of Chief Justice. President Ramaphosa has drawn the attention of leaders of political parties to Judge Maya's illustrious judicial career, in which she was first appointed as a judge of the Eastern Cape Division of the High Court in 2000.
In other news, Gauteng police have opened a case of murder after a well-known medical doctor was shot in Dobsonville in Soweto. Police say 3 suspects entered the surgery under the false pretext of needing medical attention for their friend. And once inside the consultation room, they fired at the doctor multiple times. Gauteng police spokesperson Dimakats Onebuhuli says the manhunt is underway for the suspects.
They stole 2 cell phones before fleeing the scene. The victim was taken to the nearest medical center where he unfortunately succumbed to his injuries. No arrests have been made so far.
Moving to KZN, Azimvelo, KZN Wildlife says business groups have stalled a smart fence project in the Hluhluwe Infolozi Park by requesting payment before the project could continue. The fence is an early warning system against would-be poachers. The CEO of the Wildlife Authority, Sihle Mkhize, says 8 of 11 kilometers of the first phase of the smart fence project was completed when it was stopped. Mkhize says government has committed to help fund 40 kilometers of fencing in the park.
The phase, which includes 11 kilometers of fence and is fully funded by the province and Azimvelo for 11 kilometers, is now nearing completion. We have already erected about 8 kilometers of fence, and also through the support of the minister, he has given us funding of about 40 million to erect about 40 kilometers of fence. That whole project has also commenced.
Lastly, the leader of one of Netherlands' biggest drug cartels has been sentenced to life in prison in what is reported to be the largest criminal trial in Dutch history. Ridwan Taghi, who is believed to be behind a series of gang-related killings, was Netherlands' most wanted man before his 2019 extradition from Dubai. The BBC's Anna Hooligan has more.
This is a trial that has captivated the nation. The criminal pursuits of Ridwan Taghi revealed a new type of Dutch mobster and signalled a worrying escalation in the drugs war. He was not among the 8 suspects who attended the hearing. They were brought to the high security court, nicknamed the Bunker, in armoured vehicles. Outside, heavily armed police wearing body armour stood guard, while police surveillance drones buzzed overhead. The nature and scale of this case is unprecedented in the Netherlands. 6 gangland assassinations, 4 attempted murders, and preparations for even more liquidations.
Recapping the top story this hour, the Independent Electoral Commission says besides dealing with budget cuts in an election year, they also have extra expenses flowing from the Electoral Amendment Act. Headlines at 4:30 for SAFM News. I am Dinomo Daung.
In sports this hour, Kyle joins Titans coaching team and Sundowns looking to hit the top 40. More details at 4:30.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very good afternoon. Quite heavy on Joburg's Mike 1 South today. If you're leaving Sandton, you're going to sit from Houghton Estate all the way into the Crown interchange. That is a big backlog. Looking okay out through Midrand and Pretoria on the N1 North. No problems there. Coming out of Durban, there's a lot of traffic en route to Pinetown and Pietermaritzburg. First up, you've got a breakdown at Pavilion Mall in the roadworks. So the N3 outbound queues from Sherwood through 4 level and down towards the mall. And then behind that, you've got a really big backlog coming down the N2 from Umgeni Road into Spaghetti Junction. The problem with the N2 South is trying to get into that traffic on the N3 going westbound, so it's all heavily backed up. And right in the middle of that, you've got a lot of traffic avoiding the N3 and jamming up the M13 from Sherwood across the restricted N2 bridge section towards Westville. And then further along the N3, there's a breakdown at Ashburton, so as you get up towards Pietermaritzburg, quite a heavy queue from the Linfield Park area. Cape Town, some pressure out through Hospital Bend. The N2's busy, an early start today from Searle Street in the CBD all the way through to Hospital Bend. And there's a broken down truck on Okarp-Sevek. If you're on the pass between Noordhoek and Westlake, it's on the Westlake side, but there's some very heavy traffic queuing both directions. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
There's a song that goes, "Money can't buy me love." And that's true. But then they told us all you need is love, which anybody with a mortgage will tell you most certainly is not true. Love won't pay your parking tickets or your student loan. It's also needy. It requires effort, availability, constant care. But more importantly, love requires time. And while money can't buy you love, it can certainly free up some of your time. Time to spend on the things you love, with the people you love. And if you're looking, maybe even time to find the one you love. That's why, after 50 years of investing, we've learned that time is the greatest gift of all. And the good news is, if you invest early, time gives you money. And then money gives you more time to do the things you love. And don't you love that about investing? Ellen Gray, long-term investing. Ellen Gray is an authorized FSP.
It takes one encounter with Africa for your world to change. From the 26th to the 28th of February, the global business event sector will experience the majesty of Africa at Meetings Africa. Meetings Africa showcases Africa's diverse services and products in the meetings, incentives, conferences, and exhibitions industry. Come experience Africa's spirit of collaboration at Sandton Convention Center. Meetings Africa, unlocking Africa's opportunities through quality connections.
Catch the Insider SA this Monday evening at 6 as international dance sensation Musa Mota fires the imagination of millions. Film star Zandile Mhlangu brings the action off screen as much as on. And of all the wedding venues in the world, why did Dr. Carly Andringa and Paul van Dyk choose Antarctica? Find out on the Insider SA this Monday at 6. Repeat Saturday at 1 p.m. and Sunday morning at 10:30 on S3.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 106.6 FM in Bloemfontein. SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. Leading the conversation.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
10 past 4.
10 past 4. Pop, pop.
This is Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
It is 10 minutes after 4 o'clock. Coming up on the show in this hour, we speak to Crispin Phiri, who's the spokesperson for the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, as we look at the two-day conference that seeks to review the criminal justice system, and the theme is strengthening the integrated criminal justice system. And then at 20 past 4, we speak to Thandi Smith, head of programming at Media Monitoring Africa, the IEC, assigning a framework of cooperation to fight against the disinformation as well as misinformation ahead of the election. So we'll be speaking about that. And then at 4:45, we speak to Professor Pascal Obesong, Professor of Microbiology and Global Health and the founder of the HIV/AIDS Global Health Research Program at the University of Venda. That conversation is coming up at 4:45.
The only talk radio afternoon drive show that makes sense. Beyond the Headline with Aldrin Sampear, right here on SAFM.
Aldrin, good afternoon to you, good afternoon to your team and the SAFM listeners. Could Judge Zondo's appointment be part of the cadre deployment program by the ANC? It's just a question, Aldrin. Because most of the votes, or the one that got more positives during the interview, was Judge Ma. But then the president decided to go with Judge Zondo. Could it be part of cadre deployment? It's Edward Mpumalanga.
Well, remember that the president told the State Capture Commission of Inquiry that the ANC's deployment committee doesn't discuss the deployment of judges. However, though, the records from 2018, showed that there was actually a meeting where the deployment of judges was being discussed.
Hey, Aldrin. In terms of the separation of powers, contracts of judges are not interfered with politicians. They are actually protected. no one can interfere with the contract of a judge. So if a politician finds a judge appointed, that judge will serve until their contract ends. That is a separation of powers. Thanks, it's Bongi.
SAFM values your views. Be an active citizen.
It is 12 minutes now after 4 o'clock. In conversation next with Crispin Phiri, who is the spokesperson for the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. Earlier today, the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Development kicked off a 2-day conference that seeks to review the criminal justice system, and the theme is strengthening the integrated criminal justice system to keep our people safe and secure. Deputy President Paul Mashatile addressed the conference, where he highlighted the commitment the government has made to fight crime and corruption. The Minister of Justice, Ronald Lamula, addressed the conference, emphasizing the importance of victim-centered approach to criminal justice system is imperative in attaining a safer society. We speak to Crispin Phiri next, who's the spokesperson for the Minister of Justice, that is the Minister of Justice, Ronald Lamula. Crispin, good afternoon, and thank you so much for making time for us.
Good afternoon, Aldrin, and good afternoon to our SAFM listeners.
Let's speak about the intention behind this summit, strengthening the integrated criminal justice system to keep our people safe and secure. Why? What is it that the department may have noted, or is it something where the department is saying that we have come up with concerns that have been raised, and therefore we felt that it's important to have such a summit that brings together all of the stakeholders?
Yes, the latter is also true. You may recall that in November, the Minister of Justice appointed a panel led by retired Justice Lehodi from Mpumalanga to lead some research on the reforms that are required in the criminal justice system and assist the South African Law Reform Commission to produce a report. So that report will be presented to this conference on the findings that they have found and what can be changed around the criminal justice system. But overall, the thrust of the conference looks at how victim-centric the criminal justice system is, and also how we can modernize the Criminal Procedure Act. Aldrin, the Criminal Procedure Act is exactly 50 years old. It was an act that was developed in 1977. So it is quite outdated. It doesn't cater for a number of technological developments that we now have in our society. For example, the ability to have a trial over a virtual platform, for example. How do you assess a witness virtually? Those are things that we are now grappling with as a society. And we are looking at ways to develop the Criminal Procedure Act so that it meets the imperatives of the society that we live in today, but also matches the imperatives of a constitutional democracy where we balance the rights of a victim as well as the rights of an accused.
Is this also with the intention of trying to speed up the processes when it comes to dealing with cases before the judiciary, especially the criminal cases before the judiciary? Because sometimes you find that there are issues around the transportation of inmates, or maybe it's the distance is too far, or that the inmate doesn't want to leave the holding cells or the prison where they're being kept at.
Yes, that's an astute observation. One of the things that we have been able to do by agreement, but is not legislated for, is audio-visual remand proceedings that we do from our correctional centers from time to time, where we don't have to drive in the inmate knowing very well that the matter is going to be postponed. We can make them appear in court at least virtually, then the matter is remanded. That's one of the things that we would want the Criminal Procedure Act to expressly provide for. But also, you make the observation around delays sometimes. Some of the delays that we do see in the matters that are before court are sometimes frivolous points in limine that litigants take up. And we find that the Criminal Procedure Act can be streamlined rather, and to so that some of these unnecessary points in limine are eliminated completely so that the trials proceed at a lot more faster pace. And that's the feedback that we get directly from the National Prosecuting Authority as they are at the coalface of the criminal justice system in our courts.
and digitizing the processes of the judiciary as well. I remember the former Chief Justice of the country had said that there was somebody who was willing to sponsor, I think, around 600 million rand to upgrade the systems of the judiciary. Is this something that you are looking into at all?
Yeah, unfortunately, we never got to get to the bottom of that.
Yeah.
But yes, this is something that's a major priority, modernizing the criminal justice system and the court system as a whole is a priority of our administration. And there has been a number of developments in that regard. For example, in the Master's Office, we have now gone fully online, although that's not part of the criminal justice system per se. But some of the developments there can be used as experience for what would then be required for the criminal justice system itself. And in fact, even in the court systems, we now have, at least in Gauteng, a system called Case Online, where parties are able to file online and receive the court records online, and it's a lot more efficient. So we are in the process of modernizing the criminal justice system and the justice system as a whole, and there have been significant developments in that regard.
I know that you speak about the judge president that was appointed to look at this particular review that the minister has requested, but how different is this to the work that was done by the former president of the country, Kgalema Motlanthe, when he was appointed by Parliament to look into some laws that have been adopted by the country and whether or not they're sufficient? I know that it goes far beyond just civil law, but also deals with criminal law.
There was the high-level panel review that looked at legislation that still exists, that is of the apartheid era in our society. And so some of this legislation, even in fact the Criminal Procedure Act itself, is a legislation that was passed by an unjust apartheid regime. But if you look at the ethos of the legislation, it was still workable in a sense. So it's part of the laws that we still kept on the statute book. But the more we analyze it against the Constitution, we find that there are some parts that maybe do not meet the full requirements of the Constitution. For example, the element of it being more victim-centric, that really imbues the principle of Ubuntu, for example. So how the criminal justice system can have a sense of Ubuntu when you have a victim before us. Do we treat that victim just as a witness and thank you for coming, and that's the end of the matter, or we can look at it from a very different perspective to ensure that the dignity of the victim of the crime is also restored in a very substantial way. That is what we are busy with now. So this process is drilling into the technical components of the legislation to understand whether the full prescripts of the Constitution have been complied with, and how do we ensure that we give true expression to a constitutional democracy through this legislation.
Okay, Crispin, thank you so much for your time. Just a quick one, Crispin, before I let you go. The report from the Israeli government to the ICJ, can you confirm that the department has now received that report, or the South African government?
I cannot confirm.
You cannot confirm. Okay, thank you so much for your time. Crispin Piri is the spokesperson for the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development.
#SAFMBTH.
Let's take your voice notes on 0614-104-107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear.
Hi Aldrin, it's Doomsy from Cape Town. I think the appointment of Justice Maya is very welcome. But the question will remain, why did the president appoint Zondo, who only had 2 years left before retirement? Is that not fruitless and wasteful expenditure to appoint someone who will earn a salary of a CJ for life, yet they only have 2 years? What impact did he think Judge Zondo would make? That's the question that is on my mind.
Afternoon, Aldrin. It's Loazi here from Jablani. I just want to say I like your style of presenting. You know, how you trigger people to think that don't want to think. In the case of Justice Zondo and the President, and just the line of questioning says a lot. It says you see what is happening, but you need to be objective at all times. Anyway, but I just think that
Thank
it
you,
is clear
appreciate it.
now. It's always been clear that the reason why he did not take the recommendation from the CIJ, the president,
The
was so
JSC.
that Zondo can make sure that he's protected through the Phala Phala, which is fairly simple. There's no other reason. And to make sure that Zondo deals with his enemies as well, or his opponents. Thank you.
Yeah, but I don't remember, Phala Phala hasn't gone to the Constitutional Court as yet, but remember that there was that application that the President had brought to set aside is it the Section 189? Section 89? Section 89 report that looked into whether the President has a prima facie case to answer to, and we know what happened after that. The Constitutional Court said they can't be the court of first instance on that particular case, so it must first start at a lower court, and because Parliament had decided not to adopt the report in December 2022, the decision was then taken that the matter is now moot, and that's the reason why the President is no longer pursuing that. But there are a couple of cases that have been brought by the ATM. I think the EFF has also said that they're going to be bringing a case against the President on Phala Phala.
Good afternoon, Aldrin, and good afternoon to your listeners. So, Aldrin, when we put Justice Maya on that position of CJ, are we putting her because she's capable, or we trying by all means to put a woman at the helm, so that when we look at things, we see, but we have women on this position, women on that position. But are we putting them there because they deserve, or are we putting them there because we need to balance? Or is it the same as saying we don't hire men, we hire only women for this position, or those who are above 35? Is this how we scale things here in South Africa? As a voter, that's my question. Thank you, Aldrin.
Well, remember that there were interviews that were conducted, and Justice Maya actually came out tops in those interviews. And she even beat, according to Julius Malema, who was a member of the JSC, is that she even beat Raymond Zondo. So I think that it is a matter of the capability and the capacity of the individual. Because here you have a group of men and women that have decided back then that Justice Maya is the right person to head the judiciary, and later on here she is being nominated to head that judiciary, and of course the President decided earlier on to appoint her as the Deputy Chief Justice. So I don't think it's just necessarily about the gender, although that of course does play a role to have a Chief Justice, first woman Chief Justice, black woman, and that it really does go a long way to send through a message of resilience, a message of recognizing the work that's being done by various capable people, including black women like Justice Maya.
Hello, Aldrin. I think people must remember the role of the JSC when it comes to the Chief Justice. Because when it was Zondo's time, when Zondo was actually appointed, the President gave them 4 names to interview, not to recommend. So there's a difference between that. They chose themselves to recommend, to give a list according to their preference. But that was not their mandate. And these are Eastern Cape.
But what was the purpose? So you ask somebody, or you ask a panel to interview people, then they interview the people, then what do you want them to do? Like, just logically, what is the intention? So you have the interviews that happen; they are very public, and then what? After you've conducted the interviews, then what? Maybe a report to the President that says that now we've conducted the interviews and now you can decide. And the panel, the JSC, needs not write a report to the President on what their remarks are with regards to the people that have been interviewed. What was their intention? And I think also was it that Dalimpofu was the spokesperson for the JSC at the time? I think they made a similar argument to say that, but we understood the role to also mean that after we're done with the interviews, that there must be a name that is submitted to the president, and the name was then submitted to the president. But of course, it is the president's prerogative on who he appoints to be the Chief Justice of the country.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
It's 27 minutes after 4 o'clock. In conversation next with Thandi Smith, Head of Programming at Media Monitoring Africa. So today, a set of guidelines were signed by the electoral management agencies across the continent on digital and social media. The guidelines ensure that the use of social media during the election period does not spread misinformation. The IEC has partnered with Media Monitoring Africa, Google, as well as Meta and TikTok, which has signed a framework of cooperation to fight against disinformation in the build-up to the national elections. Real 411 is one of an independent platforms for the public to report misinformation and other incidents of digital harm. To help us unpack the role it will play, we are now joined by Thandi Smith, Head of Programming at Media Monitoring Africa. Thandi, good afternoon, and thank you so much for making time for us.
Hi, good afternoon to you and your listeners.
Yeah, so 411 has been around for some time now, but what exactly is it that it offers the electorate?
Yeah, so Real 411 was launched in 2019 as an initiative to combat election-related disinformation. And since then, it's grown into a platform that caters for complaints around disinformation, hate speech, incitement to violence, and harassment on digital platforms. It's specifically being used during the election period now in partnership with the IEC as an official platform to report election-related disinformation. Once the complaints are submitted, and anyone can submit a piece of content that they find on any digital platform that they suspect to be disinformation, once it gets submitted to a really easy process on the system, it gets assessed by 3 experts. And once they've assessed the complaint and there's an outcome, it gets sent to a secretariat who is a legal expert. And if it is disinformation related to elections, it then goes further to the IEC, whose legal team assesses the complaint as well and decides on any action, if necessary, to be taken. And there are obviously a number of different actions that can be taken around election-related disinformation.
And what's the turnaround time around once a complaint have been lodged, or the person says that I believe that this could be disinformation? How long does it take for the final decision that is taken by the IEC once your team has also gone through the information?
So the complaints can be marked as urgent, and urgent complaints could take a couple of hours to get assessed and for an action to be taken. I think the quickest turnaround time that we have recorded is about 3 to 4 hours once a complaint gets submitted. And it also depends on the period. You know, outside of the election period, Real 411 is run by Media Monitoring Africa and the team, but also relies on the time of volunteers in relation to the experts that assess. So it can take a bit longer, a couple of hours, a couple of days to assess the content. But because we are in the election period, and with the partnership with IEC, a lot more capacity has gone into people involved in the platform. And so we are trying to speed up that processing time, because we know that the very nature of disinformation is that it goes viral very quickly.
Yeah.
And you need to respond, you know, as soon as the content is out there, you need to try and take action as quickly as possible. So we do try and do that.
Thank you so much for your time. Thandi Smith is from Media Monitoring Africa. It's a minute after 4:30. Time for the news headlines.
With the headlines at 4:30, I am Dino Mutaung. A very good afternoon to you. ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa has extended his condolences to the families of ANC supporters killed in a bus crash after attending the party's election manifesto launch in KwaZulu-Natal. In other news, the Independent Electoral Commission says besides dealing with budget cuts in an election year, they also have extra expenses flowing from the Electoral Amendment Act. And South Korea has accused North Korea of shipping millions of artillery shells to Russia in support of its war in Ukraine. A full update follows at the top of the hour with Greg Hoos.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It's still very heavy on Joburg's Mike 1 today. If you're leaving Soundton, you're going to sit from Glenhove Road in the Melrose area all the way through to the Crown interchange. It has been heavily backed up for a couple of hours now. Over in Durban, we've got municipal workers taking a strike and protest to the City Hall area. So various roads are closed in and around the Durban CBD, and that is causing some amazing gridlock on all those north, south and east-west routes. If you're stuck in central Durban wondering what's going on, it is that. It's the municipal workers' industrial action. Separately, there's that breakdown at Pavilion Mall still there. That's on your way out of Durban. That's very heavy from sort of Tollgate Bridge territory all the way to the mall. Behind that, the N2 South is queuing almost as far back as Queen Dundee Drive as you line up along the N2 to get into that N3 at Spaghetti Junction. A lot of other motorists avoiding that N3 and instead electing to jam up the M13 between Sherwood and Westville. Of course, that with the restrictions at the N2 Bridge is very heavy. Big queues up to Pietermaritzburg as well. There's a crash at Ashburton. It has been cleared, but the bottleneck is right through towards the Linfield Park area. And Cape Town today, we've got a fire burning beside the N2 inbound at Khayelitsha before the R300, and a whole pile of congestion on Oak-Harpsweg due to a stationary truck on the Steenberg and Westlake side. Stop-go controls are in pass. There's a bit of an extended wait to get over the pass both directions. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Doming Kapele.
In your sports this hour, let's start things off with cricket. Former Proteas Albie Morkel has joined the Titans coaching team effectively immediately. Morkel brings a wealth of experience and expertise, and his addition further strengthens the Sky Blues' commitment to fostering excellence in cricket coaching. And as part of his role, Morkel will contribute his extensive knowledge and skills and oversee a team of distinguished consultants who will play a pivotal role in enhancing the coaching program. And those consultants include the likes of A.B. de Villiers, Gary Kirsten and Vernon Philander. In football, Mamelodi Sundowns will set a new benchmark for the domestic game if they avoid defeat against AmaZulu in the DStv Premiership this evening. They will extend their record streak of unbeaten league games to 40 if AmaZulu do not beat them in the clash at Loftus. The last time they tasted defeat was back in 2022 on the 2nd of September, and they went down 2-1 to SuperSport United. They are looking to become also the first club to go through an entire domestic season without defeat, having reached the halfway mark of their DStv Premiership campaign with 12 wins and 3 draws. In the meantime, SuperSport United head coach Gavin Hunt admits that CAF football has helped them, and he can now focus solely on the league as he prepares to lock horns with Cape Town City at the Cape Town Stadium tomorrow evening at 7:30. Hunt's side faced the Citizens just 1 week ago in the Nedbank Cup round of 32 when they triumphed 3-1 on penalties following a 1-1 draw after extra time at the Lucas Muribe Stadium. The two teams are effectively fighting for second place in the league as they are deadlocked on 30 points, 9 behind Mamelodi Sundowns, who have 2 games in hand. In the meantime, Manchester City boss Pep Guardiola says that Jack Grealish will return to his starting lineup on a regular basis when his performances improve. The England midfielder started 41 games for City in last season's treble-winning campaign, including the FA Cup and Champions League finals. He has started only 19 games, though, this time around, including 7 in the Premier League.
Hopefully the impact I had last season depends on him. And all of them, you know. I try to be fair in my decisions, being mistakes, but so if he played a lot of minutes last season, and this season a little bit less in the beginning, it's the same player, the same manager, the same way we want to play, the same, nothing changed. It's just how you perform. That's the difference. And we need him. I said for the day one, we need him. Having special quality for our team. We need him. Depends on him. Hopefully he can do a...
In tennis, Andy Murray hinted that he's heading into the last few months of his tennis career after battling from a set down to beat Denis Shapovalov in Dubai to secure his second win of 2024. The three-time Grand Slam champion has been forced to fend off retirement talk. This is following a string of first-round defeats and looks set for another early exit when Shapovalov, a former top 10 player, took the opening set.
People read a lot into what I say on the court sometimes, and it's not always rational. Yeah, but everyone asks me about it all the time anyway. So yeah, I obviously still love competing. I still love the game. But yeah, it gets obviously harder and harder the older you get to compete with the young guys and keep your body fit and fresh. So yeah, not easy. I probably don't have too long left, but I'll do as best as I can these last few months, yeah.
On that note, it's a wrap from my side. For SAFM Sport, I'm Duming Khapele.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
And it is time for a market update with Marco Masilela, Chief Investment Officer at Marco Fund Managers. Marco, good afternoon. Welcome to the show. So let's look at Motors as well as the Super Group's unaudited interims.
Afternoon to you, Adrian, and to the listeners. Starting with Motors, Adrian, a strain on consumers' disposable income poses an impact on their purchasing power and also spending behavior, and increased competition coming up in the form of new entrants and competitive pricing. These vehicle brands are selling attractive derivatives and offering appealing discounts. By the way, automobile industry, Adrian, contributes 4.9% to our GDP, 2.9% thereof is manufacturing and 2% is retail, and the industry is gradually returning to pre-COVID-19 levels of new vehicle sales, shifting to smaller and cheaper vehicles, and the rental industry also recovering, aided by increased travel and corporate leisure, and also including international travel. And when you look into their parts and workshop activity, they continue to increase, and that's as a result of customers keeping their cars for much longer before replacing them. The UK and Australia experiencing a steady recovery. By the way, the SA operations contributes 55% to the revenue and 66% to the overall financial performance. The guys have seen revenue going up by 11%, but profits as headline earnings per share dropped 27%, with dividends per share down 20%. And Super Group, their results demonstrate the resilience of the business, and that's in the face of tough trading conditions, and despite being impacted by macroeconomic challenges and also issues with our infrastructure. The group revenue went up by 11.9%, driven by weakening rand, and also they acquired some of the companies in the UK, and also back home here they bought the delivery specialist in the retail sector called Right Sized Up. And Southern African supply chain businesses performed well, notwithstanding their significant loss when it comes to trading volumes and very slow turnaround times at our ports. They had new business wins, fortunately for them, and most contracts were renewed, and the dealerships benefited on the back of improved new and used vehicle sales. Revenue up 11.9%, but profits as headline earnings per share down 16.2%.
And local and international market developments.
Market participants are really preparing themselves for a full slate of economic data, and some of the remarks coming from central bank speakers coming in the coming days, and that definitely will help to determine the outlook for interest rates. And today, after stronger than expected inflation data, bets have been boosted that the Bank of Japan will end their negative interest rate policy in the coming months, and the G20 said world economy has a growing chance of a soft landing. Adrian, there's a saying that about the US Fed, how they manage interest rates, that they go up the escalator and down the elevator, but this time most market participants think the reverse will occur, and markets continue to take a breather. Oil prices are up as traders are hopeful that there might be some positive developments when it comes to the outcome of Gaza ceasefire talks, and we see Brent crude is up 0.5% at $82 a barrel. And as the US dollar and yields fell slightly, the yellow metal is regaining its shine, We see gold is up 0.2% at 2,034, platinum up 1.4% at 892. The Dow, just like S&P, they're flat. The DAX is up 0.5%, FTSE is down 0.1%, CAC down 0.1% as well. The JSE is down 0.6%, and we've been dragged down by our resources. By our industrials are down 1.5%. Our financials are down 0.6%, but our resources are up 0.7%, and we've seen the rand firmed almost to 0.8% against the US dollar. Is now at 19.14, to the pound is 24.26, and to the euro is 20.75.
Thank you so much. That's Makwe Masilela, Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. We're taking your calls on 086 000 2032, and you can also drop me a voice note on 0614 104 107 and an X at Aldrin Sampear.
Catch the Insider SA this Monday evening at 6 as international dance sensation Musa Mota fires the imagination of millions. Film star Zandile Mhlangu brings the action off screen as much as on. And of all the wedding venues in the world, why did Dr. Carly Andringa and Paul van Dyk choose Antarctica? Find out on the Insider SA this Monday at 6. Repeat Saturday at 1 p.m. and Sunday morning at 10:30 on S3.
Mzansi Africa.
Siyalobuga.
Siyabulela nangomso.
Thank you for witnessing the Africa Cup of Nations Cote d'Ivoire 2023 in your language of choice on SABC radio stations, digital platforms and SABC TV channels.
Big ups to Unilever for being on board.
Your magnificent and heartwarming support gave millions of South Africans a spectacular and exhilarating experience during AFCON.
Asibonge. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM.
Peggy from KZN. Adrian, if that's so, if the case is Maya was so great in the first place, then why was she taken aside? And I had a lady that said politicians do not interfere with placement of judges. Zero, no. The answer is incorrect. They do interfere. If they don't interfere, why do we have then a panel sit and be paid to do interviews and do recommendations, and then a person turns out to take his friend instead of the person that has been identified as the top one from the interviews, only to then give her the position later in life? What happened in the first place? Honestly, we are being played here. Are we fools? We are being played by this Ramaphosa of yours.
Hi, Aldrin. Afternoon. Aldrin, can you please just give me a snip of this thing? I heard it a bit on the news. Hi, Aldrin. Afternoon. Aldrin, can you please just give me a snip of this thing? I heard it a bit on the news. Not sure if you touched on it. Of the secretary of the parliament, is it the parliament or what, who's earning more than a president? I mean, like, are we seriously in this country? Are we seriously paying tax? Are we seriously like having roads with potholes? Are we seriously having load shedding? Are we seriously having like a lot of the people who sleep without food, children who can't go to school because it's flooding, it's raining, there's no bridge to cross, and someone is like the increase is going crazy to such a level that they earn more than a president? Please touch on it, Gwena.
Good afternoon, Aldrin. Yeah, with regards the appointment of the Chief Justice, has anyone stopped to think that maybe, just maybe, the whole process was in actual fact to find a permanent replacement after Judge Zondo had retired? That he had 2 years to go, and what was the president going to do with Judge Zondo? So he made him Chief Justice, and now we don't have to go through the whole process again.
Good afternoon, Aldrin, and your listeners. I want to concur with Edward from Mpumalanga and the recent caller. Is the appointment of Zondo, what do you call it? Is it a political deployment? Because that committee recommended Judge Maya. Then the president decided to appoint this one because this is his friends and defended him. So something's not right.
Hey, don't say that it is the president's friend, because remember how there was a "he's my friend, he's not my friend" during the State Capture Commission of Inquiry with former President Jacob Zuma and Zondo. So be very, very careful giving people friends that they are not friends with. Chico joining us from Soweto. Good afternoon. Hello, Chico.
Good.
Hi, Chico. I'm going to ask you to raise your voice there a little bit. We're struggling to hear you.
Yeah, I'm just saying, first, I just want to warn the NK party.
The what party?
NK party.
Oh, okay.
I just want to warn them. It doesn't, if Mhlathuze voted NK party, it's just a tiny village. It doesn't mean the whole KZN is represented by a tiny village like in Mhlathuze. So it doesn't mean NK party will win the next election either outright. With a small portion of village, then they think they will win the elections. And then the appointment of Judge Maya. I hope Judge Maya she's neutral. She is not affiliated to any political party from the bottom of her heart, because you need to be neutral if you are a judge, and don't be influenced by anyone. Understand it? When they appoint her there, they appoint her to serve, not to serve individuals or any political party, but to serve the public. So I just hope it doesn't have a soft spot for any political party, neither the ANC. Understand? But
okay.
Yeah, ANC will come back. Come this election, ANC will come back. I was hoping that the DA, but since they are reluctant about the social grant 350,
you're not going to be
now
voting
I'm
for
doubting them.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. Chico there from Soweto. 0614-104-107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear.
You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM.
It is 11 minutes now before 5 o'clock. We're in conversation next with Professor Pascal Obesong, who's a professor of microbiology and global health and founding chair of the HIV/AIDS and Global Health Research Program at the University of Venda. He was recently awarded a B2 rating as a scientist by the National Research Foundation. According to the University of Venda, this kind of rating is given to individuals for whom all or the overriding majority of reviewers are firmly convinced that the applicant enjoys considerable international recognition for the high quality and impact of his or her recent research output. And the Prof is now joining us on the line. Prof, good afternoon, and thank you so much for making time for us.
Hi, good afternoon, Aldrin. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much, Prof, for making time for us. So what is is it a B2 or is it a B-2 rating? How do you even pronounce it?
Well, it's a B2 rating. It's a B2 rating with the different categories. So you have from C3, C2, C1, B3, B2, and E.
Mm-hmm. So what does a B2 mean?
Well, the B2 in essence means that the research output and the impact thereof of that individual in question has international recognition.
And would this be international recognition being cited in journals, or international recognition in which sense?
Yeah, so well, today the process goes is that you submit the evidence as required by the National Research Foundation, and this is sent out through peers nationally as well as internationally, and then they make a judgment call in terms of the portfolio that you have submitted.
Yeah.
So they look at the variety of things, the citations, in terms of how you're advancing the science, in terms of how other researchers are using your work, in terms of the students you are training in that particular field of expertise. And so a whole lot of stuff, to come out with a determination in terms of who is this person.
And tell us then about the research that you've done that also looks at the gut infection on child growth as well as development, and also the response to vaccines.
Yes, this was an international study that was done in South Africa, as well as 7 other sites, that were in Tanzania, in Brazil, in Peru, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Brazil as well, and then with also certain and collaborators from the US and from Europe. And the whole idea was to say what are the interactions, what actually impacts a child growth and development from birth. And so the child is born and exposed to the environment. In this case, we're looking at those infections that the child picks up as the child grows older, and how do these infections affect the child's growth in stature, in cognitive development, and how the child may respond to vaccine in terms of the expanded program on immunization. Are these infections having an effect on the benefit that the child is expected to get from these vaccines? So, in essence, that was the study. It was, I would say, one of the biggest ever studies done. And so my role in that study was as one of the principal investigators, as well as the South African investigator and South African lead investigator as well. So that was a very important study. It was funded by the Gates Foundation, with inputs from different funders as well. It ran for 5 years, and the data in a way is still being analyzed by some other researchers. So it has a strong impact in terms of how the kids, and in particular the kids from communities of low socioeconomic status, how are they affected in terms of the infections of the gut?
Yeah.
Even though they did not show you a disease, but how does that infect them in other ways?
Yeah.
As well.
And so looking at the demographic of the children that this research would have focused on, would the research have also looked at the impact that stunting would have on a child's ability to respond to vaccines? I don't know if there's any correlation at all.
Yes, we did. One of the key findings from that study was that, and that many times it is not so much in terms of what the child shows of an illness, but the load and the pathogen load, the quantum of the germs in the intestine, in the large intestine of the child, has a correlation in terms of the growth of that child. So kids may become stunted, although they have good food and good nutrition, but a mitigating factor is low that have in the intestine. And this is something which we do not expect to find, because many cases, for example, if I have an infection, you expect to find a disease showing itself, either by diarrhea or some other things that you can see as a symptom and signs. But a child could be a child can look very healthy, but the child is not going well, because of the pathogen load. And this, we also saw that this also affects in terms of the antibody titer. When you get a vaccine, you expect the body to be provoked to release a certain level of antibodies, and we're able to show an association that as the child has a higher burden of intestinal infection, this also reduces the amount and the level of antibodies that the child can produce, to ward off some of the child with infection.
Prof, a final one. I see that you're also part of the leading the team of researchers at Univen on the surveillance of COVID-19 through wastewater-based epidemiology in selected districts in the Limpopo province. It's 2024. It is the 27th of February. Do we still have COVID-19?
Well, from what we are seeing some signals. In fact, what we are looking at is that we sample some of the wastewater the influent wastewater coming into the treatment plant. So sample them every week as a way of keeping an eye in terms of what may be happening in the community. So we are still seeing some signals based on the RNA levels that we are detecting. But it fluctuates. This week we may see something, and next week we see nothing. So at this time we can't say what is really going on, and the surveillance is very important because it may give us an early warning signal if something is amiss in our communities.
Okay, Prof, thank you so much for your time, and congratulations on this recognition as well. Professor Pascal Obesong, Professor of Microbiology and Global Health, and also the founding chair of the HIV/AIDS and Global Health Research Program at the University of Venda, better known as Univen. 0614-104-107.
This is Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
Let's take your voice notes on 0614-104-107.
Aldrin, I think we need to educate our people. Nobody said the president of the country is the highest paid person in the public service. Or in the state. After all, the president have got salary for life, not pension. But the chief executive of the state-run owned company, they earn even much more than the president. Transnet, all other ones, Land Bank, Eskom, they earn far much better because we wanted experts, and not just politicians who sometimes don't have metric, who sometimes don't have a basic education, but they are there because they are politicians. You want managers. You want people who are learned. Whether education and experience go together is another story, but you want basic education first.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, and I speak here on correction, that the municipal managers, some municipal managers, if you look at municipal managers in metros, some of them actually earn more than the president. I'm speaking here again on correction. So, I think I saw a report some time ago about some municipal managers that earn more than the president. So, yes, you're correct. The president is not the highest earning person in the republic, not by far the highest earning person in the republic. 0614-104-107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086-000-2032. It's 5 o'clock. Time for the news.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
Ramaphosa extends condolences to families of crash victims in North Korea accused of supplying ammunition to Russia. Good day to you. The ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa has extended his condolences to the families of ANC supporters killed in a bus crash after attending the party's election manifesto launch in Durban. The bus crashed on the R33 near Paul Petersburg on Sunday. Ramaphosa and ANC officials visited the families of the deceased in Mayflower in Mpumalanga. He promised the bereaved families that the party and the provincial government will provide them with the necessary support.
It's been a sad morning, but at the same time, it's been also uplifting the spirits of the family members who lost their loved ones. And we assured them that we will, as the ANC, assist as much as we possibly can to hold the memorial as well as to have the funeral on Saturday. So we are saddened by all this. It's now this year the second time that we have a bus accident where a number of our members and supporters die and some get injured.
The IEC says besides dealing with budget cuts in an election year, they also have extra expenses flowing from the Electoral Amendment Act. The Commission's officials appeared before Parliament's Home Affairs Committee to, among other things, discuss its budget and timetable for this year's elections. The May 29th vote will be the first that allows independent candidates to contest national and provincial elections. The IEC's Chief Financial Officer, Dawn Mbata.
The projected length of the ballot paper is longer, and this was for the first time, and this does have financial impact. Also, the impact of the increased longer ballot paper on the electoral material, such as ballot boxes, security seals, as well as ballot booths. Also, the possibility of increasing the number of staff allocated, and you must also be aware that there's also a high probability that there will be increased litigation.
The Deputy Health Minister, Sibongiseni Dlomo, is leading an outreach program overseeing the compensation of former miners at Orkney in the northwest. He's accompanied by the Provincial Health MEC in a bid to trace and provide compensation and pension to eligible former mine workers. The Deputy Minister says this is an effort as part of government's commitment to addressing the needs of former mine workers who contributed to the nation's mining industry, especially those who contracted respiratory-related diseases while working in the mines.
For me, when I visit the province, is to check the progress. And the progress that I'm really getting from this province is that of our target of about 130,000 of our people that are former mine workers, at least more than 20,000 have been reached, and over 232 million has been paid to those who are deserving, either for illnesses or for pension. So that's a very exciting story, because it does not happen, maybe I don't know in other countries, but when workers retired or were actually getting off dismissed from work, only black workers never got their compensation.
The Department of Education in Gauteng says it's in the process of setting up satellite schools in Diepsloot, north of Johannesburg. This in a bid to reduce placement pressures and persistent overcrowding in schools. With 7 weeks into the new academic year, some Gauteng learners are still waiting for admission. Department spokesperson Steve Mabona says catch-up programs will be implemented for newly placed learners.
We are continuing with the process of placing those learners. We have been interacting with schools. We're going to overcapacitate those schools. We really need to make sure that we fast-track that process.
South Korea has accused North Korea of shipping millions of artillery shells to Russia in support of its war with Ukraine. The BBC's Jean Mackenzie has that story.
Seoul and Washington have been tracking shipments between North Korea and Russia ever since Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin met last year and struck an undisclosed deal. South Korea's defense minister believes the North has now sent more than 6,000 containers of military supplies, which could amount to as many as 3 million shells. In return, he said Moscow had sent thousands of containers of food. Russia needs extra ammunition to keep fighting its war in Ukraine.
Top story, the ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa has extended his condolences to the families of ANC supporters killed in a bus crash at the weekend. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Gous.
Coming up in your sports this hour, Banyana eager to qualify for Olympics in style. Morkel joins Titans coaching team, and Springbok Test tickets on sale from March. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
No real major surprises around Gauteng this afternoon. Traffic sort of where it should be. I guess the standout is really the Mike 1 from Sandton down to Crown. That's reasonably busy. And there is a crash on the M2 near Joe Slovo Drive. So from the Crown heading out of Joburg direction Cleveland and Germiston, that's all very heavy. Durban CBD starting to calm down a bit, but it is very busy. That's after municipal workers made their way in their trucks through the Durban CBD towards City Hall. So a couple of roads that were blocked have been reopened, but it's left a big backlog of traffic through the central Durban area today. If you're coming out of Durban, it's not great either. The N3 queues from Tollgate Bridge all the way through the roadworks towards Paradise Valley. That was all backed up by a broken down truck a little bit earlier around Pavilion Mall. The N2 south from Queen Nandi Drive down into that mess that is Spaghetti Junction. It's quite heavy, and there's big pressures on the M13 both ways, Sherwood through to Westfield as motorists get caught sort of diverting off that N3 and just running into trouble on the M13. The crash at Ashburton on your way to Pietermaritzburg, that is being cleared. And talking heavy traffic, Cape Town's South Peninsula is a standout today. There's a stationary truck on Oud-Kaap-se-Weg on the Steenberg side. Stop-go controls with really heavy backlogs between Steenberg and Nurturk. And you've got a big bunch of diverting traffic jamming up Boys Drive going south from Muizenberg, and a big backlog avoiding Oud-Kaapse on the main road from Fishhook through Cork Bay, St James, and up into the Muizenberg area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. Leading the conversation.
Some people who could not pronounce Kandla, they've now learned Nkandla, Nkandla, Nkandla. Hey, hey, hey.
Aldrin, it's Elon Musk, not Musk.
Sorry, John, it's Elon who?
Musk.
It's not Elon who?
Musk, as you've been saying it.
It's not Elon Musk. It's Elon Musk.
Musk, yes.
Hey, hey.
Say this right. Fish. No. Fish.
Yes.
Fish.
Yes,
Say it
yes,
real
yes.
quick, short.
Fish.
Listen to me, Oscar. Is fish.
Fish.
Tig sausage George Cook. Hey, hey, hey.
At the end of the day, there is such a thing as a black accent. We seem to have forgotten that, because there's French accents, there's Indian accents, there's Chinese accents, and then there should be a black accent,
Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
7 minutes after 5 o'clock. Coming up on the show in this hour, we look at the matter that is before the Constitutional Court. In the Constitutional Court hearing, an application that has been brought by the Bromwell Street residents in Cape Town. So we'll be speaking to one of the residents there, Chanel Commando, and then we'll also be speaking to the attorney that is representing them. And this is the battle that has been ongoing. I think it's been close to 10 years now. Since there was an eviction order to have them evicted from the area that they live in on Bromwell, after the landlord sold the buildings to another developer, and now the developer, of course, wants to develop the area. But what is the duty of the city of Cape Town? What responsibility do they bear in terms of emergency shelter? 0614 104 107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear.
Good day, BTH Tim, and of course my fellow listeners. Aldrin, it is so heartbreaking that, it seems like Judge Maya is being used as a pawn, because if it wasn't that way, she was the one to be, she should have been in Zondo's position by that time, because she was just recommended by almost everyone. So I don't see a reason why now, not then. But you know how it is with our leaders. Maybe there's an agenda that they need to push her with. You never know. And the next thing, when things backfires, they throw her under the bus. So you never know with these leaders. Only they know. But really, I cannot wait for an explanation from Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, Mr. President. What was he thinking? Why now, not then? Great show, Aldrin. I'm Kaugelo from Soshanguve.
Thank you, Kaugelo.
Fact of the matter is, Aldrin, Zondo is the overall. He's the boss of the courts. So yeah, he knows why he couldn't accept the complaint.
On X, Bele saying that Justice Maya is capable and has the capacity to be the Chief Justice of this country. I don't think it's fair to reduce this discussion to her gender. The recommendation has merit.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
10 minutes after 5 o'clock, we're in conversation next with Chanel Commando, who is the lead applicant of the Bromwell Street matter. Earlier today, the Constitutional Court heard an application from the residents of Bromwell Street in Cape Town. The Bromwell families, who have lived in their homes for generations, face eviction into homelessness, while the city has provided temporary housing in Wolverrivier. The families say that this is far from public goods such as schools, hospitals, as well as from the workplaces. To tell us more about the proceedings, we speak to Chanel Commando, and then after that we'll be in conversation with Disha Govender, who is the attorney and head of the Law Center at Ndifunugwazi. Chanel, good evening. Thank you so much for making time for us.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much. But how are you doing? This has been going on now for close to 10 years.
Yeah, as you know, I am Chanel Commando, and I am the spokesperson of Bromwell Street Family. And it's been very overwhelming today because of all the arguments that was raised in court. A lot of the arguments that was raised was good points, and I think it made the city realize that there is a way to change their policies or update their policies to what has been said today and what has been asked. What we want as a Bromwell family is for the city to come forward and make a change for evictions, because evictions is something that breaks up families, it breaks up communities, it breaks up how you feel inside, the anxiety, the stress, not knowing where you're going next, being thrown out on the outskirts where you can't come to your job, or when the children can't come to school all week. So there's a lot of things involved where eviction is placed. It's not the case, it's what actually is happening with the people in the case, and that it's real people's lives being touched by the case. So that is what we want from the city. As I heard today, the judge asked him if this is the same as it was in Sapphire Town and District 6 being done all over, just that it's being done in Woodstock. And it's actually touching to hear, to think that people fought for freedom and never received anything, and that it's still going on after all these years.
Yeah, and the city has made available alternative places for the residents to relocate to. But what's your problem with those places that the city has suggested?
They have offered places.
Yeah.
And we went to these places ourselves as a resident to go and see what it is like at these places. And when we came to Wolverfield, the people of Wolverfield told us that this is no place for people to stay, and we could see for ourselves the conditions that people are staying in, with shops that is far, schools that is far, no transport like buses. You need to take 3 taxis to come to town. The next place was Campis. We went to Campis, and when we came to Campis, the people of Campis told us that we should not take this offer. Reason being, service delivery is not being made, and it's not a place for people to stay. They were promised they're going to stay there for 6 months and get permanent housing. Majority of them are there for 10 years already. So we just want the city to come up with a plan, to make a plan for emergency housing or transitional housing, because if they can do it for a group of people in our area, why can't they do it for us?
But there was also the suggestion that was made, Chanel, that, some residents saying that they want to rather be in the inner city, but then the problem with the inner city also is the high cost of actually living in the inner city.
Yes, like I said, there was provisions made for certain people in our area for transitional housing, which the people in Bromwell Street can afford, but it wasn't offered to them. It was only offered to that certain group of people because the city wanted that land for social housing. And that is what the city is saying, that there is no land for transitional housing or transitional housing for us, and there is no emergency accommodation in the city or will be made available in the city. The only availability is for poor working class people or on the outskirts.
And that, of course, also comes with a lot of transportation costs. But Chanel, thank you so much for your time. Listening into the conversation is Disha Govender, attorney and head of law center at Ndifunugwazi. So at the heart of this case lies the constitutionality of the City of Cape Town's housing program and its actions in responding to emergency housing needs of people evicted into homelessness. Abahlali baseMjondolo have also joined the proceedings as friends of the courts, represented by the Socio-Economic Rights Institute of South Africa, Syria, as and the court adjourned, and judgment has been reserved. To tell us more about the arguments presented to the Constitutional Court, we speak to Disha. Governor Disha, good evening. Thank you so much for making time for us. So before the court is this issue around the emergency housing program of the city of Cape Town. The High Court found that actually it is unconstitutional, but then the Supreme Court of Appeal set that decision aside.
Hi, Aldrin. Yes, thank you for having us on. You are correct in the sense that at the High Court, the judgment was in our client's favor, and the court specifically granted relief that declared the city's emergency housing program, and importantly also its implementation in terms of that emergency housing program, unconstitutional, in addition to granting a relief that would ensure that our clients are provided with emergency accommodation in a location as close as possible, as the city is obliged to do so. In the Supreme Court of Appeal, what we saw was the court decide not to grant to uphold the appeal in respect of the declaratory relief that the applicant sought. Specifically, then, not making the order that the city's emergency housing program is and its implementation is unconstitutional. But it did grant an order which specifically ordered the city to provide our clients with emergency accommodation in a location as close as possible. Of course, the concern in this case has always been whether or not the city has properly applied its mind in making offers of emergency accommodation to our clients, but also generally in relation to the policy in its program, which specifically excludes the development of any emergency housing in the inner city, which is an area that's experiencing high levels of gentrification and a high need and demand for emergency housing. And how can that ever be reasonable? And on that basis, we sought to appeal to the Constitutional Court in an attempt to obviously have them decide the issue of the constitutionality of the city's emergency housing program.
Okay, please explain to us what the emergency accommodation or emergency program, or emergency housing program would look like, what is envisaged with having such a program, but also does this program come with a security of tenure? Because somebody being moved from another place to another place, the other argument that they could have is, how long is it that I'll be staying here until I'm being moved to a different place, which speaks to this question around security of tenure.
So, Aldrin, the emergency housing is meant to specifically deal with the urgent and immediate need that a person is facing as a result of them being evicted into homelessness or threatened with eviction into homelessness. So it is not a form of permanent housing. So emergency housing is considered to be something that is supposed to be of a temporary nature. However, in the context of a broad housing crisis, where there's this complete lack of well-located affordable housing, there's very little options for where people go to next. So it really is also linked to the broader way in which the city and actually government as a whole delivers on its obligations in terms of Section 26, being the right to access to adequate housing. Because, of course, emergency housing may end up seeing people live there for a very long time if they have nowhere to move to after. And so that also does require the city to obviously, and the state in general, to make the efforts to ensure that there is housing that is delivered, a range of housing. So from emergency housing, transitional housing, permanent sort of BNG housing, as well as social housing. Of course, this case specifically really spoke about the city's response to emergency housing needs. But when you're talking about the right to access to adequate housing and the state's delivery in respect of that, there are linkages between it all.
Yeah. Is the test then with the emergency housing that it must fill, for instance, some of the conditions that were set out in the High Court, that it must not be too far from where the residents are residing? The question that is the issue that are being raised now by Chanel as well, around schools, hospitals, workplace, and the transportation that is involved in all of that. Is that the test also that goes into determining whether the emergency housing that is being made available is actually suitable?
So the correct test when you're looking at the constitutionality of the city's program and its implementation is whether or not they've acted reasonably, whether or not the program is reasonable. And of course, when you're dealing with emergency housing needs, when people are really the most vulnerable and most dependent on networks of support. You heard Chanel mention how it actually becomes a matter of survival if they get relocated far away from those support structures. So location is one element, and how the city has considered the location of its emergency housing is one element that factors into whether or not it can be said that the emergency housing program is reasonable or not, because there's an obligation on the state, on the city in particular, to provide emergency accommodation in a location as close as possible. But if all the city's policies are such that it will only ever develop emergency housing on the outskirts, what that means is that as close as possible will always be far away. And the people that are always going to be sent far away, the ones that are going to be in the most need, the most vulnerable, are the ones that then get sent away, and their vulnerability gets compounded because there's a lack of emergency housing in the inner city as a result of the state's failure to provide emergency housing in the city, but also as a result of the state's broader failure to develop well-located affordable housing.
I know that the case is against the City of Cape Town, but what is the property developer Woodstock Hub Pty Ltd saying?
So the Woodstock Hub is not a party to the appeal proceedings in the Constitutional Court. And they have maintained that, of course, they bought the property in order to use it, to redevelop it in order to generate higher rental incomes. And so their position has always been, as articulated in the papers, that they are being prejudiced as a result of not being able to use this property which they bought. But as I mentioned earlier, they did not choose to participate in the appeal proceedings.
Thank you so much for your time. Disha Govender is an attorney and also the head of the Law Center at Ndifunugwazi. 0614-104-107, and you can also drop me a call on 086 000 2032.
You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM.
Okay, let's go to Cape Town. William, good evening.
Hello, good evening, Aldrin. Aldrin, here in Cape Town, the city of Cape Town they are really not fair, and the DA, what they are doing in Cape Town is very, very bad. I used to vote for the DA. I don't vote for the DA anymore. You know what they do with our people here? Even Patricia de Loo when she was the mayor of Cape Town, she took that land in the city that's near the city, and instead of making it for affordable housing, they're selling it to developers. What are they making out of these deals that they are making? And another thing is, when Jacob Zuma came here, when they hand over the houses a few years in Langa to people, the people from Langa stoned him because they give all the people from Eastern Cape that comes over, they give all that people, give the people houses, even in many of the so-called previously black areas. They don't integrate the colored people into the black areas. They only take from the colored areas and they put black people by the colored people. But there's no integration in Cape Town. And so I don't understand why you give people that comes from a different province priority. Our people, our black people in Guguletu and Kailisa, they send backyards. And now people from Eastern Cape that could put squatter camps on, they get first houses. This problem will never ever be solved unless the city of Cape Town is fair. And the DA, they're shooting themselves in the foot. You know, Mitchell's Plain is the biggest colored community in the whole South Africa. There's not even a graveyard in Mitchell's Plain. We have to drive outside of Mitchell's Plain for a graveyard. And there's lots of land from the government in Mitchell's Plain. What they're doing, they take wire, they put it around and protect Fynbos. Right over where we stay, in Mitchell's Plain, there's a lot of places for houses for what belongs to the government. They don't build houses for the people. They protect areas for nature. Or you can give 95% for nature and give the 8% for the people. We need houses. People are struggling, and the city of Cape Town needs to be blamed.
William, thank you so much for the call. And of course, again, is the cost of living in the city of Cape Town, the rent that you need to pay, Very, very, very expensive living in the city of Cape Town. Yesterday we were speaking about, what are they called again? The digital the digital nomads, people coming from out of the country, from outside of the country, who come from countries where the currency is much stronger than the rand, and they work remotely. They can work from wherever they want to be working from, and some of them are settling in Cape Town, and that is pushing up the cost of a property, whether it is rental or for purchase in Cape Town. Issue that we raised yesterday with the Minister of Home Affairs as well. So on one end, because if you buy a property, you want the property's value to increase, you want higher yields from that property, right? So you have that one aspect. But then on the other end as well is that you actually need people to live in and around the area, including the workforce. Well, if the workforce don't get enough money, salaries, this is, to afford living in the city of Cape Town, what does this then mean for companies who want to have access to that workforce? A workforce that can't afford to pay for the rentals, as well as even buy properties in Cape Town. But maybe you live in Cape Town as well. I'd love to hear your experience when it comes to the cost of living in the city of Cape Town, but more specifically, of course, the cost of property in the city of Cape Town. 0614 104 107.
Congratulations to Judge Maya. And yes, there will always be detractors who are too lazy to do their research, who will just insinuate that she's there just because she's a female. Pay no attention to such. Imbogoto is here, and we are capable, and we are competent, and we are challenged, and we're ready to take on all the tasks so that we break the stereotypes and we break the barriers, because we understand that when a woman does a job, it's not just for her or her womb or those of her womb, but it's for the upliftment of the community and the country. So congratulations to the judge and Josie Gleckstop.
Good afternoon, Aldrin. Aldrin, my thing always, I fail to understand why everybody in all politicians, all parties, all civic organizations want to push everybody in the city. I mean, the city is just that big. Is there no way we can build cities outside of CBDs? I mean, there's ample land and opportunity to build new cities. Why must everybody be pushed into a CBD? Yes, I fail to understand that. Thank you.
Okay, let's go to Anonymous, who's joining us. Is from Cape Town, I suspect. Anonymous, good evening.
From Cape Town. I just wanted to say that I'm fully familiar with Bromwell Street.
Yeah.
We had business in Salt River for 29 years. That place has become a slum now. So yes, these people need housing, and the city must come up with a plan to rehouse these people. They can't live in these conditions all their lives. That's all I want to say. Thanks.
Yeah, and Anonymous, just quickly though, are you able from your end, at least from the last time that you were in Bromwell Street, able to describe the conditions that they live under, the state of the infrastructure and the buildings?
Yeah, no, the buildings are falling to pieces. It's scary. I'll never go back there again or drive down that road. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Anonymous, there, joining us from Cape Town. And here's the other thing also, is that so when you create these cities or townships or places where communities will be living, especially for people who are unemployed, where will the economic activity be coming from? Where will the economic activity be coming from for those people? And I always think about, like, you give somebody applies for an RDP house, they get the RDP house, however, though they are unemployed. So now they struggle to take care of the house or the property, but of course you have the indigent programs, and the indigent program only goes so far. Then what happens is that some people, because they're so desperate, end up renting out the house or even selling the house. Because what does it mean to have a property, a shelter, a roof over your head, but that time you're starving. It's 5:30. Time for the news headlines.
In the headlines of this half hour, the DA's poured cold water on the ANC's claim that the laptop, which contained the cadre deployment records from the 1st of January 2013, crashed. The ANC president, Cyril Ramaphosa, has extended his condolences to the families of ANC supporters killed in a bus crash. And a Russian rights activist has been sentenced to 2.5 years in prison for discrediting the Russian armed forces. There's a full update at 6 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Yeah, very good afternoon. All of a sudden it's getting heavy now on Joburg's N3 South. There's a breakdown just around Linksfield Road, so it's a big backlog through towards Limborough Park. I was just marveling a little while ago how nicely the N3 was running earlier, but that's all changed now and looking quite heavy indeed. Maxwell Drive eastbound at Pretoria Main, there's been a crash there. If you're moving from the Woodmead side of Joburg, that's quite slow. And the Mike 1's been busy for at least a couple of hours now. Still, if you're coming out of Sandton, queues from around about sort of Houghton Estate all the way down into Crown Interchange. Durban CBD's eased up after municipal workers made their way in their big trucks through the CBD towards City Hall. A lot of the closures of roads have been reopened. The M7's heavy both ways to Bel Air and Wakesley. Also, the N3 is calming down, but it's still really busy between Spaghetti Junction and Paradise Valley on your way out of Durban. And major delay alerts for South Peninsula traffic in Cape Town today. A stationary truck on Okarp Savek. It's on the Steenberg side, but it's causing amazing backlogs of traffic all over that area, including long waits to get over the pass. And then a lot of traffic just staying well away from that and jamming up Boys Drive and Main Road on the alternative route from Muizenberg through to Cork Bay. Both of those options are quite heavily backed up. Motorists avoiding Okarp to south to get down to Fishhook. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
In sports this hour, Banyana take on Tanzania in the Women's Olympic Qualifier third round second leg today in Bombela Stadium. South Africa defeated Tanzania 3-0 in the first leg with goals from Jermaine Sioposengwe, Thembi Kgatlana and Hilda Magaya, and come in the return match high on confidence. And just talking about Sioposengwe, this match will also serve as a special tribute to her, who will become the 10th Banyana player to get 100 international caps. In the meantime, Manchester City boss Pep Guardiola says that Jack Grealish will return to his starting lineup on a regular basis when his performances improve. The England midfielder started 41 games for City in last season's treble-winning campaign, including the FA Cup and Champions League final. He has started only 19 games this term, though, including 7 in the Premier League.
Hopefully the impact they had last season depends on him. Depends on him. And all of them, you know. I try to be fair in my decisions, being mistakes, but so if he played a lot of minutes last season, and this season a little bit less in the beginning, it's the same player, same manager, the same way we want to play. The same, nothing changed. It's just how we perform. That's the difference. And we need him. I said for the day one, we need him. Having special quality for our team. We need him. Depends on him. Hopefully he can do a...
In hockey, the South African indoor hockey is set to kick off amidst great enthusiasm and anticipation in the mother city this week. The event, which is scheduled to take place at Wynberg Military Base and University of Cape Town from the 28th of February to the 2nd of March, promises an electrifying display of talent and sportsmanship. There'll be an A section and B section for both men's and women's competitions. Meanwhile, in rugby, tickets for the Springboks' highly anticipated home tests against Ireland, Portugal and Argentina, priced from 150 to 350, will go on sale in March. The Boks will take on Ireland in 2 tests in the incoming series, with tickets going on sale on the 4th of March for the test in Pretoria and the 11th of March for the clash in Durban. This will be followed by the historic first test against Portugal in Bloemfontein on the 20th of July in their closing match of the mid-year series. Then in tennis, Andy Murray has hinted that he is heading into the last few months of his tennis career after battling from a set down to beat Denis Shapovalov in Dubai to secure his second win of 2024. The three-time Grand Slam champion has been forced to fend off retirement talk. This is following a string of first-round defeats and looked set for another early exit when he faced Shapovalov. Ending things off with cricket, New Zealand paceman Neil Wagner called time on his 64-test career today, bowing out as the nation's fifth highest wicket taker with 260 victims after being informed that he would not be selected in the upcoming series against Australia. Wagner was picked in the squad for the two home tests against Pat Cummins' Australia, but was told by head coach Gary Stead that he would not play in either match. On that note, it is a wrap from my side. For SAFM Sport, I'm Dumin Kapele.
The Northwest Provincial Legislature's Portfolio Committee on Economic Development, Environment, Tourism, Agriculture and Rural Development will embark on public hearings throughout the province on the National Small Enterprise Amendment Bill, Basics in B 2023, on 28 February 2024 in Ngakamudiri Molema District at Motswedi Community Hall in Motswedi, in Dr. Kenneth Kaunda District at Ballroom Hall in Matlosana, in Dr. Ruth Sombuti Mompati District at Unkranang Community Hall in Christiana, in Pujanala District at White Hall in Breds. All hearings start at 10.
Mzansi Africa.
Siyabonga.
Siyabulela nangomso.
Thank you for witnessing the Africa Cup of Nations Cote d'Ivoire 2023 in your language of choice on SABC radio stations, digital platforms and SABC TV channels.
Big ups to Unilever for being on board.
Your magnificent and heartwarming support gave millions of South Africans a spectacular and exhilarating experience during AFCON.
Asibonge. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the
game. Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
And it's time for MoneyWeb Market Update with Jimmy Moyaha. Jimmy, good evening. Welcome to the show. So why is Fitch not impressed with the budget speech that was delivered by the minister?
Good evening, Aldrin. Good evening to me and good evening to the listeners. Fitch is skeptical, and they have every right to be. I mean, the budget speech that was delivered painted a very optimistic, and these are the words Fitch has used as well, picture of what revenues are going to look like over the medium term as compared to what we saw in the November midterm budget policy statement. And alongside that, they've also flagged concerns around the fact that the underlying fiscal issues have not been addressed, and the state of SOEs is also still in question. Fitch has cited that it is likely that in order for us to achieve any resemblance of this growth that has been forecast, or these revenues that have been forecast, we definitely are going to need some assistance to be provided to SOEs, the likes of Eskom and Transnet. They specifically mentioned Transnet following that guarantee that the state was providing there. So we'll dig into that. We'll see what we make of that Fitch announcement. They've kept, obviously we got that ratings adjustment or that ratings decision in January, so they've sort of kept in line with that outlooks to say that even though they can see that the deficit might narrow by 2026-2027, they're still not too convinced that the revenues will be realized, and it's kind of a wait and see approach from that perspective. But we've also got a conversation with Motus. They released their interim results for the 6 months ended December. We're going to speak to their CEO and get a sense of how they've performed and what they're looking forward to in the second half of the year. And then we've got an interesting conversation with Tungela Resources around their latest initiative to rehabilitate some old and unused mining areas and mine shafts in an effort to improve the environment in those areas and rehabilitate those conditions. They're looking at fish breeding, quite an interesting project they're embarking on there. So we're going to speak to them and get a sense of what that looks like, how much they've invested in it, and what their plans are for that. And then because it's Tuesday, we have our Agri Tuesday feature this Tuesday, and we're taking a look at another interesting innovation from Southern Oil. They've come up with a new way to deal with the waste that comes from their canola oil production. They're the largest canola producer in Africa, and we're going to look at how they deal with their waste and what they do with that for the farming community. But before we get to that, the markets have had quite a weird day. Equity markets are in the green mostly. And Henko Creer has been keeping an eye on the markets for us throughout the day, and he joins me now to just take a look at the markets. Good afternoon, Henko. Thanks as always for keeping an eye on the markets. Rand showing good ground against all the majors, but that's not the story. No one seems to care because Bitcoin's nearing $60,000 now.
Yes, Jimmy. Good evening to you and to Aldrin, and good evening to all the listeners. Yes, I think you could say that Bitcoin is going for gold, literally and figuratively this afternoon. But let's have a quick look at what's going on over in the US. The Nasdaq at this stage, 0.3% up. The S&P 500 unchanged, hasn't made up its mind whether it wants to go up or down so far, but still early in the day for them. And then the Dow Jones trading 0.3% weaker. Then in Europe, the FTSE 100 finished 0.1% down, but the DAX and the CAC 40, those two each finished 0.5% up. Unfortunately, not the same picture here by us. The JSE's All-Share Index lost 0.7% today and closed at a level of 73,142 points. The Industrial Index lost 1.6%, the Financial Index 0.5% weaker, but the Resources Index came back a bit today and finished 0.6% stronger. Naspers didn't enjoy a great day. It lost 2.5%. British American Tobacco finished 2% down. AB InBev, Process, as well as Richmond each lost 1.8%, and Glencore finished 1% weaker. But if you try and find some companies that gave strong performances today, you'll find a lesser known company, smaller company by the name of Alphamin, which finished 16% up today. Then Sasol is coming back with vengeance and finished 4% up today after it lost quite a bit these last couple of days. And then Exxaro, as well as the MTN Group and Reunert, each gained 2%, followed by Kumba and Goldfields, each winning 1.5% at the end of the day. Back to some companies that gave poor performances today. Those were Pick n Pay. Pick n Pay keeps on losing and lost 4.5% today. DRD Gold, 91 and Afrimat each finished 4% down. Truworths, Mondi and Investec each lost 3%, and Pepkor Holdings finished the day 3% weaker. On the commodities market, the price of gold currently $2,034 an ounce. Silver is trading at $22.65. Platinum $890 and palladium $960 an ounce. Then the price of Brent crude is on the increase, and it's heartbreaking to hear about all of the fuel increases we're going to see. But Brent crude now trading at $83 a barrel. And yes, the rand coming back a bit today, but so are all of the other exchange rate and commodities of your emerging markets, and that's mostly, it looks stronger. But don't be deceived, it's only because the dollar is weaker today. There's a lot of US data coming out later this week. So everyone holding their breath and waiting for that data to come out of the US. So you'll see a bit of a weaker dollar this afternoon. So now you'll see a stronger rand trading at 19 rand and 10 cents to the US dollar, 24 rand 20 cents to the pound, 20 rand 65 to the euro, and 12 rand 50 to the Australian dollar. And then, yes, like we said earlier, Bitcoin going for gold, now trading at a record figure of $57,500, and that is 1.2 million rand for a Bitcoin. Jimmy, that's how the markets performed today.
Thank you very much for that update, Henku. Very impressive on the part of Bitcoin. I wonder how much higher it will continue to rally. We're going to dig into these and other stories just after 6 p.m. Aldrin, I'm going to be looking at Sasfin. I might pick the market watcher's brain around Sasfin. They had an announcement quite interesting today that SARS is looking to pursue a 4.7 billion rand tax bill against Sasfin. And on the back of that, I suppose, the share price was down almost 8% for the day. But I'm going to dig into that and other stories just after 6. For now, back to you and the team.
Thank you so much. That's Jimmy Moyaha. He's joining us again just after 6 o'clock. We're taking your voice notes on 0614-104-107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear. Our studio line is 086-000-2032.
Hi, good evening, Aldrin. This is Sue from Cape Town, specifically Mitchells Plain area. So one of the big concerns that I have with the backyard dwellers and the city not doing anything for us is that Mitchells Plain is zoned a area 1. And if city wants to speed it up, they can rezone the area to a zone 3 where we'll be able to do densified build within the Mitchells Plain areas as there's so much vacant land still sitting there. And this would then help with boosting affordable rentals. Because if you have a 300 square meter plot, you can do a double story and you can do 7 units on top of that. But City is delaying even trying to change us to a S3. So please get hold of City and ask them that.
Yeah, I wonder also about the bulk infrastructure that is required for such a rezoning. And also considering that you are looking at building multiple stories. But someone has sent me a picture from Property 24 of a property in Rondebosch in Cape Town. 4,500 Rand a month. It is 10 square meters. 10 square meters. Can you imagine how small 10 square meters is? So let me just quickly describe to you what's in this picture and in this 10 square meter room. It is a 2-door wardrobe. It is the shower. It is the toilet, just exposed right there in front of you. And then you have the basin. You have a table there, a square table, and then there is the bed on the side. Not too sure if it's a double bed, could be a double bed, but that is like 4,500 Rand. Okay, the person here in the caption says, "Good day, sir. Please refer to the said property shown here too. How is it that the above is even reasonable? We just have to appreciate the actual truth. Non-whites are slowly being driven away from Cape Town, whilst the DA is swiftly while the DA is swiftly welcoming tourists with open arms and gently creating their little Europe within RSA, the Republic of South Africa. They have managed to create an economy of exclusion for blacks and colored people. No one is challenging this nor talking about it. 4,500 Rand for a 10 square meter room that has your toilet in front of you, right in front of you, and you also have the basin right in front of you, and then the shower in front of you, right where you sleep. It kind of resembles the backyard rooms, if you know what the backyard rooms look like, especially in the townships. But here you also have the toilet that is inside the room. It is not partitioned. You have the toilet that is inside the room, very exposed, almost like what you see with prisons as well, that you have the bed here and then you have the toilet in front of the bed, totally exposed. And then you have the shower as well, of course. So that just speaks to the cost of living in the city of Cape Town. Anonymous is joining us from the Western Cape. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. How are you?
We're good, Anonymous. How are you doing?
I'm okay, thanks. May I just be general on the subject of the matter that is discussed today? I'm an outsider, and I've been outside Western Cape, and now I've been here for at least 3 years. In my observation, Western Cape, it's actually the best part of the South Africa where segregation is practiced. For one to make a living, you need to be a working class person and at least earn about 40,000 and above. For the colored people, I feel sorry for them because they don't have other options. But for people who are like black South Africans who have other options, maybe who are coming here for work, who can go to the township to rent and also rent in maybe in CBDs, they are actually the ones maybe who are making a living. The colored community, they don't have other options, and it's the suffering, you can see it on the ground. And you can see that like either they stay in a squatter camp or township. So, or else they are maybe they are working class or they are privileged as white people. But the segregation is at best, because even the place open space, you can see it private owned. So it's I don't know why NCF never said anything and EFF is not saying anything. I can hear them making noise about land and all those things. People in the Western Cape are suffering in it. They are really suffering.
Yeah. What do you think should happen, Anonymous?
for me, like, they need to address these issues to say, you know what, as much as like the land maybe belongs to individuals, so but have ways in like the government will have open space the people to make development for people who are of the province, or find ways that like the people of the province may be able to have development that they can be able to have settlement, because like by look of things, the politics is not. Politicians are not saying anything, and the system is made to be not challenged. And when you challenge it, people question your thinking.
Yeah. Okay, no point taken. Thank you so much, Anonymous. And I've raised this point before also about my experience in Kenya and covering the elections in Kenya, is that the political parties were actually campaigning on a ticket also on rent and how to reduce the rental costs, especially in the inner city, considering that that's where economic activity is happening. I haven't heard political parties here speak about it, but except I think the EFF mentioned something about the cost of rentals in the manifesto. I'll look it up quickly. But I think it's a very important thing. It's a very important thing, especially considering that most of us are migrant laborers. Yes, we are migrant laborers, We come from Eslalini to come and find work in the CBDs in provinces such as Gauteng, as well as the Western Cape, but specifically in Cape Town, in KwaZulu-Natal, but specifically in Durban, as well as Pietermaritzburg. So you have people that leave their homesteads and come to the inner city to come and find work, but then the income is eroded by the cost of renting and living in the city. Yes, you've eliminated the cost of transportation because you're living in the inner city. However, though, it is the rental then that erodes your income. Johnny is joining us from Polokwane. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you, Aldrin?
I'm well. How are you doing?
I'm well, man. Look, I'm very concerned about a statement that was made by a guy that you interviewed who was expelled by the African National Congress in KZN. A guy, there's this narrative now. I think it was started up by Zuma himself. The guy, he said, Ramaphosa's ANC. I'm concerned and I'm worried. What is Ramaphosa's ANC now? When we were campaigning during the President Jacob Zuma, we were campaigning for the ANC led by President Zuma. We were never saying that this is Zuma's ANC. But now, MK people, and with Zuma also, they are labeling this and they are saying ANC Ramaphosa. Where is this thing coming from? Why are MK people now saying ANC Ramaphosa? What is that? There is nothing called the ANC Ramaphosa. Hello?
Maybe they took it from former President Jacob Zuma. He keeps on referring to the ANC of Ramaphosa.
No, there's nothing called ANC of Ramaphosa. African National Congress is the African National Congress. This thing is started by MK people who are now labeling to say ANC Ramaphosa. It's wrong. When you are leaving the ANC, leave the ANC. Don't say it's Ramaphosa's ANC. Ramaphosa is a leader of the African National Congress now. Jacob Zuma was the president and a leader of the ANC. But this narrative was never to say these are decisions that are taken by Zuma's ANC or Ramaphosa's ANC. There's nothing. This is the ANC. So when you go out to campaign, go and campaign for your own organizations. Don't say. Don't come and say this is Ramaphosa's ANC. Ramaphosa himself, he knows that he does not own the ANC.
Yeah.
The ANC belongs to the membership. But this thing, it seems like it is a campaign. It's a campaign of MK to say we want to tell the people that this is not the ANC, but this is Ramaphosa's ANC. So what is the line between the ANC and Ramaphosa's ANC? And then what is Ramaphosa's ANC? Because Ramaphosa does not own the ANC.
Yeah. Okay, Johnny.
That is wrong. He said it, and he said it, the guy who was expelled, he said the same thing. And the spokesperson of the MK thing also.
They all say the same thing. The ANC of Ramaphosa. Yeah, it's something that has come up continuously with the former President Jacob Zuma as well. But remember that sometimes when the ANC reflects on very nostalgic mood around the ANC of yesteryear. They speak of the ANC of Walter Sisulu, the ANC of O.R. Tambo, the ANC of Governor Mbeki. So maybe that could be one of the reasons that it was so easy for former President Jacob Zuma to come up with an ANC of Cyril Ramaphosa, but it is not used as a term of endearment.
#SAFMBTH.
Good afternoon, Aldrin and listeners. So here's how it goes. If a person is 2 years away from retirement, you don't appoint them for a job, okay? Number two, if the person that you're interviewing for a job is the second last or the last person on the list in terms of how the interview went, you don't hire the person for a job. It doesn't happen like that anywhere unless there is nepotism, there is friendship going on there, or some sort of shenanigans going on there. It never works out like that. This guy was appointed because he was doing Cyril Ramaphosa a favor. How do you say all the things that Uzondo said about the ANC during the state capture, but then you conclude by saying that President Ramaphosa saved the country? How is the country doing now? Have we gotten rid of corruption, or has corruption gotten worse under Ramaphosa?
You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM.
We've come to the end of our voyage. Thank you so much for choosing Flight SAFM BTH 326 with me, Aldrin Sampear. Today we're playing out with Brenda Fassie. Promises, promises, promises. And you'll hear a lot of those promises now in this election year. Today we're leaving you with the words of Rajiv Suri, who once said, "Don't hold on to the past, it won't help in moving forward. Dare to dream big." And Njinji is reading our credits this evening.
I'd like to put some credit forward for the wonderful show from Team Dumi, Kanya, Temba, Kahiso, Charles, Vusi, and not forgetting our formidable captain that is flying us from 3 to 6. The Aldrin Sampear. Well done, guy, for the wonderful show. Thank you.
Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
And remember to love each other and lead with compassion. Dotsins, enjoy the rest of your evening.